good morning, good afternoon. Now we are kind of formally starting this event. Um, Before I ask for the opening remarks, a few technical issues I would like to mention. So you may have already noticed that this event is offered in English, Russian, and Ukrainian interpretation. So you find the language button somewhere at the bottom of your screen, and you can select the language you would like to listen in and also speak to. So I understand we also have a chat available in the Zoom, so you can also post questions there and comments, and we will try to address your questions and comments either in an oral form, or the chat can also be used for reactions by presenters or for sharing of additional information. So if you have not done it yet, so please modify your name on Zoom so that we can not only see your name, but also the country or organization that you're representing. So many of you have already done it. So ideally put your name, organization before, and then your name. So that would be highly appreciated. Short information to presenters. So if you are able to do so, please share the screen yourself and for the presentations, and if there are some problems, so let us know and we can do this on your behalf. I also would like to use this opportunity to thank all the presenters from Austria, Germany, and international organizations who are volunteering to share the knowledge and experience in this regard, and also volunteering to contribute to this event today. So now it's time to hand over to the formal opening of this event. I would like to introduce first Nicolas Bonvassin, who is the Chief of the Operational Activities and Review Section of the Environment Division, to say a few opening remarks to all of you. Over to you, Nick.
Thank you, Michael. And I think you've said much of what I wanted to say in a way, but it's just a pleasure to welcome you all to this event organized by my colleagues, Christine, Michael, Carolyn, and our excellent consultant, Jana. This is within the framework of the EU-funded EU4 Green Recovery East program, which we will hear more about in a moment. We have a very rich agenda today, animated by experts from Eurostat, the Austrian and German Environment Agencies, the European Environment Agency, Statistics Austria, and the United Nations Industrial Development Organization. I hope I haven't missed anyone. We've got a very good participation. I see we have 73 people online now. I think about half of the participants are from our key target countries, which are Armenia, the Republic of Moldova, and Ukraine. But overall, there are over 20 countries, experts from over 20 countries. Circular economy, as we know, it's a complex field, and to be able to make progress in this area, we need to be able to monitor progress, which is itself very complex. So this is why we're fortunate to have these experts with us. But to really get the most out of this event, please do engage. Please do use the chat function, as explained by Michael. Do engage in the question and answer sessions throughout the workshop, I hope that you will find it interesting and valuable. I just wish you also to enjoy the meeting. So thank you very much. Back to you, Michael.
Thank you, Nick. And I would like to hand over to Christine Ingebrigtsen now from the same section as Nick. So Christine is leading our ECE activities under the EU4 Green Recovery East project, including the organization of this particular webinar. And Christine will give us a little bit an overview of what we can expect in the next few hours. Over to you, Christine.
Thank you, Michael. Colleagues, can you just confirm that you can hear me properly?
Perfect.
Okay, perfect. I was not sure. I'm always struggling with meeting rooms and so on. But dear colleagues, also a warm welcome from my side to this event and workshop on circular economy monitoring, funded by the European Union, as we just heard, actually. The objective of the meeting, as you have also seen in the agenda, is to familiarize participants with frameworks that aim to monitor a circular economy, a transition to circular economy. We will hear about especially the EU circular economy monitoring framework, but also about international work that is done in that regard, especially the Conference of European Statisticians guidelines for monitoring a circular economy. But we will also discuss a little bit the national perspectives. We will have good practices or practices and experience shared by Germany and Austria. And we will also have discussions in session 3 of today's meeting on how the business actually can support monitoring efforts. And then in our last session, session 4, actually, which is in the afternoon, after a short break, we will discuss challenges and solutions in monitoring a circular economy. We will have also a moderated panel discussion, and I hope we will have very fruitful discussion throughout the day. But with this, I think we will directly go to our first substantive session, which is sort of giving a little bit an introduction, first of all, overall to the EU4 Green Recovery East project. And then later on, we will hear about the monitoring frameworks that are existing, especially the EU Circular Economy Monitoring Framework, its structure, scope, but also the Conference of European Statisticians Guidelines, as I mentioned, as well as monitoring efforts and research that is done by the European Environment Agency. And then we also will hear a little bit about the circular economy monitoring activities that are conducted specifically under this project. But with this, I would like to give the floor to our first speaker in session 2, Mr. Gerhard Pulver from the Environment Agency Austria. Gerhard is the project leader of this project, and he will give us a little bit an overview and some insights into the project itself. Gerhard, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Christine. Good morning, everyone. Christine has already introduced me. I'm the program lead for EU4 Green Recovery East, and I'm with the Environment Agency Austria. And I would like to provide you with a brief snapshot of what the EU4 Green Recovery East is about and how it links to this training. So EU4 Green Recovery East is an EU-funded program, and it started last year in January, and it will be implemented by this consortium that consists of Environment Agency Austria, Expertise France, OEO, OSD, UNECE, and UNIDO. And it will be implemented until December 2028. The overall budget is 21.3 million, but this budget is for several years and for several countries. So we are currently engaging actively in Armenia, in Moldova, and in Ukraine, and over 5 components. The first one is about circular economy and resource efficiency, which is also the component within which this course or this webinar is hosted. The second component is about protecting water resources and reduce pollution. This relates to river basin management plans and their monitoring, as well as to economic aspects of water management and international cooperation. Then we have component 3, which is about alignment with EU environmental standards. Basically, here we help the partner countries to align with relevant EU directives and under Chapter 27 of the EU acquis. And then it's about data reporting to the Environment Agency of Europe. And the fifth component is about transboundary cooperation on environmental issue. For example, about water climate security nexus and transboundary water management. So that's the overall program in a nutshell. And let me go to the second slide here. 1 second. Okay, I see. Can you see the second slide? No, or is it still the first one? Still the first one. I have two different views. On one screen, I have the second slide. On the other one, I have the first slide. That's very strange. 1 second. Okay. I'm in presenter mode, but it doesn't switch. Ah, no. Okay. So, yeah. So our plans for circular economy in the countries where we are working includes direct support to circular economy. So this is the component one that I was talking about earlier. It's basically, it entails support to governments, including the support on circular economy monitoring, support to small and medium enterprises, as well as linkages between small and medium enterprises, government, and academia for circular economy capacity. And another aspect is the support under component 3, which I've mentioned before. So this is basically support to the framework conditions for circular economy. It includes awareness about circular economy and also the adoption of EU legal frameworks related to circular economy, for example, on waste and waste packaging could be examples. And let's have a closer look into component 1. So component 1, it has 3 outputs basically. The first output is about identifying relevant stakeholders, identifying and prioritizing value chains and building on value chains that have already been identified in the respective countries. We certainly don't want to reinvent the wheel here. And then provide a decision-making tool and demonstration projects. So decision-making tools for government, but also for SMEs. These are mostly digital decision-making tools. And this also includes the pilot for European Circular Economy Monitoring Framework. Then under the second output, it's about knowledge and good practice transfer related to the Circular Economy Action Plan of the European Union and to empower enterprises. So here we have online circular economy training programs in mind, but also the establishment of a circular economy hubs in Armenia and Moldova, and the revival of the resource efficiency and cleaner production clubs. And the third output is about policy dialogue and business-to-business links. So this is engagement with small and medium enterprises, engage them with international best practices and expose them to international best practice, and facilitate technology transfer as well as access to innovation. And I would like to go a bit deeper into output 1.1, which offers the framework for this webinar. So under output 1.1, we have the pilot for European Circular Economy Monitoring Framework. And this includes to equip institutions, government institutions mostly, but also businesses, with tools to support and monitor progress in the implementation of circular economy, and to conduct 2 rounds of monitoring based on a set of indicators. And it starts with a baseline and then a follow-up assessment tool. And this is basically where I end with my snapshot of what circular economy, what EU4 Green Recovery East can offer in the field of circular economy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gerhard, for this very useful introduction and overview about the project. I think the part on circular economy especially is also very important actually because we speak a lot about transition to a circular economy and green economy. So actually, component one is in that regard, of course, of specific importance. So that's actually very good that we got this overview and that we have this event today, which we hope will support those efforts. So now we move on to our next speaker. Our next speaker will give us an introduction to the EU Circular Economy Monitoring Framework, its structure, scope, terms and definitions, but also a little bit about the database that has been set up, and share some insights from that work actually. And I'm pleased to invite Mr. Renato Mara Campanelle from Eurostat, who some of you might know actually from the work on circular economy. And yeah, I'm pleased to have Renato with us here today. After Renato's presentation, I think we will do a quick question and answer. Also maybe to Gerhard. I think Gerhard will be with us a little bit more in case there are any questions, but maybe we can summarize a little bit the questions and always like after two presentations do a short question and answer session. Thank you very much. And I give the floor now to Renato. Renato, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Christine. Good morning to everyone. Can I share the screen for my presentation?
Yes, please. If it doesn't work, we have your presentation with us, just in case. We can also show it from here.
Okay, do you see the presentation?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. So good morning again. My name is Renato Marra. I am a statistical officer in the unit E2 in Eurostat. Is the unit about environmental statistics. Eurostat is the statistical office of the European Union and is a service of the European Commission. We have been working about measurement of circular economy for several years, and we have experience to share. I will give you an overview of our monitoring framework. So I will tackle the structure of the current monitoring framework on circular economy and which are the current and upcoming activities. So Eurostat published a monitoring framework on circular economy. In May 2023, the Commission adopted a revised EU monitoring framework for circular economy as part of the new 2020 Circular Economy Action Plan. The monitoring framework is a dashboard of 11 indicators with sub-indicators organized in 5 dimensions and aspects of circular economy. The first is production and consumption, then waste management, and secondary raw materials, competitiveness and innovation. And the last one, the fifth, which was added in the last revision of the monitoring framework, is global sustainability and resilience. So the update is dated in 2023, and now the monitoring framework, the current version, better illustrates in the new dimension the role of circular economy in achieving a circular economy target set out in the EU 2030 climate agenda. And the indicator that reflects this aspect is how the circular economy contributes to climate neutrality. And also this last dimension is tackling how to promote the UN SDGs with the indicators consumption footprints that indicates the extent to which production and consumption system are within the planetary boundaries. And the last aspect is how we can secure the supply of energy and materials with the indicator import dependency. And so the indicators for electricity. Most of data are
Renato, could you repeat? We are having currently a little bit problems to hear you. You're breaking up, actually. Could you just repeat the last two sentences, please?
We see some lines and a couple of
Renato, can you hear us? Actually, we are having problems to hear you. You appear frozen sometimes, and your sound is breaking, actually.
I propose that we are sharing screens from our end, and Renato just uses audio. So then,
just a second, yeah, maybe.
I will.
Because we can hear you actually when the screen is not shared. Now we can hear you properly, actually, and it worked the first two slides. But okay,
now it works. Now we can hear and we can see you, Renato. Please continue.
You just tell us when to.
Do you want me to start again from
maybe from the 11 indicators and from the.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see it. Yeah, but now it works actually. Sorry, colleagues, for the inconvenience.
So this part, I was saying that is the showing the dashboard of the monitoring framework, which comprises 11 indicators organized in 5 dimension aspects of circular economy, which are production and consumption, waste management, secondary raw materials, competitiveness and innovation, and global sustainability and resilience. In the 2023 update, the monitoring framework now better illustrate the new dimension, the role of circular economy about the global sustainability and resilience, and the indicators reflecting these aspects are the consumption footprint, which is an indicator provided by the JRC, and the import dependency, which reflects how can we secure the supply of energy and materials. The data are provided for the EU level and EU countries, and for the 4 EFTA countries, and most data are Eurostat data, but there are also other providers. Next, please. So the monitoring framework was triggered by the Circular Economy Action Plan and 23, and was agreed by all the European Commission services. There is a balanced scope between environment and economy. Indicator using our already available data, and some data, some exception on this exist. And there were several consultation. The processing included several consultation steps with expert groups and public. So basically, the indicators were not decided by Eurostat, but by the Commission as a whole. And this is, let's say, I would say, a link to the to our next panel discussion, because is about one of the key challenges in establishing a monitoring of this policy, because the governance system is very important. That all the bodies involved are engaged, are coordinated, and for improving also transparency of the process. So the process is, I would say, it's complicated, involving, has been complicated, involving several DGs, the cabinet, national statistical institutions, business associations, but eventually it pays off. Because each one can help make the result better, and the final result is better than the sum of the single contribution as we were in silos. So the point is to overcome this culture of silos is hard and painful work, I would say, with people which is different and has complementary ideas and backgrounds and interests, but the results pay off. Within this process, Eurostat view was of having a limited number of indicators and ensuring regular dissemination of the results, and having certain minimum quality standards. Because Eurostat work is basically identifying the strengths and the weakness of data, of our data and data of other providers. So basically here I'm talking about definition, classification, standards, and metadata. Next, please. What we did again is collect and prepare data from other producers, create a data set in production and dissemination database, prepare metadata. That means data description, statistical concept and definitions, data accuracy, frequency of dissemination, timeliness, and comparability of data. And we also show within our dedicated section other dissemination products, such as a visualization tool, the scoreboard, a flow diagram, and infographics and press release. Next, please. The framework is based on existing official statistics from Eurostat and other official providers, the European Commission, including the JRC and the European Patent Office. We try to have as many as possible indicators based on the SIA framework. And as the data already exists, the monitoring framework doesn't increase the administrative burden on countries. And last, the selected indicators have been evaluated against on how they perform in terms of relevance, acceptability, credibility, easiness, and robustness. This criteria is also known as RACER criteria. Next, please. About the dissemination of Eurostat framework, there is a dedicated website that provides a brief introduction on the policy, on the monitoring of this policy, background information, and relevant links. The data for indicators and sub-indicators are reported together in a tool that facilitates comparison of the indicators for EU and for countries. This is basically the main data source for who wants to access data, and all the information can be found there, and so a single place on a website. But in addition, there are tables for each indicator and sub-indicators, and set the corresponding metadata files, and also they are available in the Eurostat database. In some cases, tables with further breakdowns and alternative measurement units are also available in the Eurostat database. In the next slide, I will show how the monitoring framework looks like. So on the left side, you can access to the different information. One of that is the monitoring framework with the dimensions that can be accessed. Each one can be accessed with the drop-down menu. And I will show you, for example, the last dimension in the next slide. So this aspect, this dimension of global sustainability and resilience includes 4 indicators. It is displayed the value. You can access a table and also a chart, and you have access to the metadata for each indicators. And in the icon I, clicking on that, you have additional information on the definition of each indicators, the relevance, and the data providers, the source of the indicators. Next, please. We don't expect changes in the short run, mainly because the monitoring framework of the EU is triggered by a policy act by the European Commission. So we can implement changes only depending on this, but we keep improving the quality of the indicators and the quality of the current set of indicators.
Sorry, I think Gerhard Pulver is sharing instead of you. Okay.
It's okay.
Sorry, I have problems with my IT system today.
So what we can, what we expect in the short term is the publication of a technical report by the European Environment Agency on the circularity rate. And in general, we keep working on improving the quality of the indicators. This happened lately for the indicators on private investment, jobs, and the value added of the circular economy activities. And also improved calculation method for the recycling rate on e-waste and on food waste. Next. So thank you for listening to my presentation. What was not shown within the presentation, as I said, in the version that I shared, there were highlighted some I would say elements for the discussion that we will have later, and I will quickly mention these aspects. So one is aligning the circular economy framework with the objective of the policy strategy. Then set up a governance system that can strengthen the coordination amongst the agency in charge of collecting and analyzing data. And also linking the framework to a international statistical monitoring, international statistical framework for indicators, such as the system of environment economic accounting, that increase the comparability of data within the different aspects of the circular economy, but also within countries. So thank you again.
Thank you very much, Renato, for this very useful and informative presentation. I think the points which you mentioned at the end, of course, are also very, very important to remember. And I mean, we will have time throughout our workshop today to discuss further. I think the overview was very useful, actually, and also thank you for being very frank that sometimes, you know, since there are so many actors involved, it's complex, sometimes complicated. But it's worth the effort because at the end, actually, the result is what matters. And I think if you have the various stakeholders involved, at the end, the result actually is better, and also the ownership is better. And I think you also mentioned it at the end a little bit, that the governance is important, the different stakeholders. I invite now participants to ask any questions or provide any feedback to Gerhard and Renato. We didn't have a chance to ask questions to Gerhard, but in case there are any questions to the first presentation, please feel free to ask also questions to Gerhard, and then of course specifically also to Renato on his presentation related to the EU Circular Economy Monitoring Framework, but also how it's disseminated, the data and information he showed us from the website. So please feel free to take the floor or put your questions in the chat, actually.
There is already one, Christine.
Yeah. So there is a question from Roman from e-Circular from Moldova. And the question is, Renato, will there be a new radical change for circular material use rate compared to the 2018 one, or just changes? And he shares a link. And if you could please share more information, whether there will be any changes to that area or indicators.
No, not at all. The circular economy, the circularity rate, the indicator is an established methodology integrating 3 different data sets, material flow accounts, waste statistics, and international trade of goods. And I mean, since the beginning, as the methodology has been set up, and as what we have been doing is analyzing with the help of the European Environment Agency the results country by country, to see which are the drivers of the different results among countries. But no changes in the methodology are foreseen.
Thanks.
Thank you, Renato. Are there any further questions, colleagues? I'm checking if I see any in the chat. No more questions in the chat. Anyone who wishes to take the floor? It seems everything is clear. Thank you, Renato, for the excellent presentation. I think Renato is still a little bit with us, so in case, throughout the discussions, there will be additional questions, I think Renato would also be available a little bit later. So with this, I think we can move on to our next presentation and speaker. As heard from Renato, we learned a little bit about the EU Circular Economy Monitoring Framework. And in our next presentation, we will hear about work from the international level, where actually also Eurostat was involved. Michael will mention that. In the next presentation, we will hear about the Conference of European Statisticians Guidelines for Measuring Circular Economy, and especially the part A on the conceptual framework, the indicators and measurement framework. Later on in the afternoon, we will also hear about the part B, actually, but I'm not going into detail now because Michael will tell us a little bit more about the difference of these two parts, actually. With this, I would like to give the floor to Michael Nagy from the UNECE Statistics Division. And yeah, Michael, the floor is yours. I can see your screen already. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Christine, and I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, thank you very much for the introduction, Christine, and also thank you, Renato, for giving the overview on the Eurostat framework. I would like to say upfront before I start my presentation that the work I'm going to present now is fully aligned with what Eurostat has been doing. So because now you see here on the screen Conference of European Statistician Guidelines for Measuring Circular Economy, conceptual framework. So this is not a competing framework, but it's kind of expanding the Eurostat way of thinking from a wider perspective, not only from a regional wider perspective, but also to give guidance to countries who are interested in setting up national indicator sets on how to do it. And this is also how my two presentations are connected. I'm presenting you now more the conceptual thinking and later on a little bit on where you can find guidance for doing this in practice. But I have to go back a little bit in history, why we have been doing this. So in 2020, the Conference of European Statisticians, who is the highest body, statistical body in the EC region and beyond, so consisting of chief statisticians of our region, they carried out an in-depth review, what they usually do with new and emerging areas, with the objective to understand better how can statistical systems or statistical offices be set up in a better way to inform a new policy area such as the circular economy. And the in-depth review concluded with a few measurement issues that need to be tackled. So when we talk about measuring circular economy, first of all, we need to understand what is the measurement scope, because there might be some areas where you can discuss what is in, what is out from a circular economy perspective, and should be the measurement scope. I give you just one quick example. I think there is a kind of common agreement that, for example, circularity in water is, of course, an important issue for circular economy, specifically for dry countries. But the question is, do we really would like to have lots of indicators that represent the water cycle, or should we more look at the material side? So these were discussions that we had to also clarify. Definitions and classifications that are used in statistics is also an important aspect. So the question is, do definitions and classifications that have been developed from a linear point of view of the economy, can they be also used from a circular point of view? I give you a simple example. The term waste is not necessarily as defined in a way that it's clear that we can use the same term or with various definitions also from a circular economy perspective. So there was something needed also to think about how do we relate the term of waste to a circular economy measurement. Data availability and fitness, Renato spoke a little bit about it. So there is a limiting factor also in the Eurostat framework that even if something is relevant, the data might not be necessarily available. And this is a bit a limitation also of the indicators that we see on the European level. But we also wanted to say, okay, what are really relevant indicators and how can countries be supported in producing the necessary information? So this can also trigger production of new statistics. Coordination across institutions and within the NSOs. Renato also mentioned that this is a cross-cutting issue. You need to understand what input you needed, what kind of collaboration you need between a national statistical office and other actors. But even within the NSO, you need to establish cooperation, for example, between, let's say, a national accounts department, who very often is in charge of the system of environmental economic accounts, and environment statistics. Demands and expectations by users have to be met. So even when we talk about circular economy, you might have shifting priorities. For example, very often it starts from an environment perspective, but it can also then go towards a supply security perspective. In times like this, where tariffs are being discussed, there might be a shift from the focus areas. Disseminations and issues. There are many ways to disseminate this information, but also the interlinkages with other policy areas. And so this is why this task force has been established to develop practical guidelines for measuring circular economy. And we learned very quickly that we have to clarify this conceptual understanding first before we can give practical guidance to countries on how to do it. And I also have to say that forces were joined in a very early stage with OECD and other partners such as Eurostat, and the output was really a kind of common understanding of the conceptual framework for measuring circular economy should look like. So as I already said, the guidelines consist of two parts. So the part A, which I'm going to present in a bit more detail in the next few slides, has already been endorsed by the Conference of European Statisticians and is also available online. So it includes a headline definition of a circular economy. It discusses the measurement scope and important terms and definitions. It proposes a set of indicators that are recommended to countries to be produced on a regular basis. And you will see many indicators that are actually also taken from the Eurostat framework, but also it discusses the relationship with existing statistical standards. And the part B, which is ready for electronic consultation, hasn't been published yet, is then more a practical guide on how to do it. But I will discuss this a little bit later on. Coming back to the part A. So what can you find in this part A? So the proposed indicators are one of the outcomes of this joint work. And I have to say again, this was with lots of partners. So ECE and OECD had together this collaboration, but important members were Eurostat, the European Environment Agency, the Food and Agriculture Organization, UNEP, and many others that you can see here on the screen. And this is really, really important because the outcome is a milestone, I would say, because it represents a kind of really common understanding of these organizations and partners in what is within the scope of measuring a circular economy, what are the research items, and so on and so forth. So we started with a headline definition, and which then was turned into a conceptual framework that from that we derived the indicators, the main measurement points of that framework, and we also discussed a little bit the measure monitoring considerations. And I will come back to this in the next few slides. So let me start with the headline definition of a circular economy. It was so important to agree on that at the early stages of the work, because everything is of course related from an agreement on what is a circular economy from a measurement perspective. And I will not go into details here because there are many definitions out there for a circular economy. And this headline definition is not competing or replacing existing definitions. It just tried to look at existing definitions, at what is in the core of these definitions. And usually in the core of the definitions of circular economy definitions, it describes an economy where the value of materials is maximized and maintained as long as possible. Then it looks at the input of materials and their consumptions, and then it also looks at the minimization of the generation of waste. So this is let's say, the three cornerstones of every circular economy definition. Some of them are a little bit more detailed, so also describing the benefits for jobs, the benefits from a social perspective, and so on and so forth. But we did not take this into account. We just wanted to look at the main cornerstones here. So because I think we understand there are many benefits of having a circular economy. So this was more like from the measurement, let's say from the policy perspective. This definition was strongly discussed also in various OECD circles. And then our task force translated this into statistical terms. So for example, when we talk about materials, we try to link it with existing terms and definitions. When we talked about value of materials, how can this be understood? When we talk about input of materials, how does this relate to natural assets or resource efficiency? Then also at the life cycle of materials, how to understand it. So the document explains this a little bit further, how these policy terms can be understood from a measurement perspective. This then later on led to a conceptual monitoring frameworks and building blocks. And what you can see here on the screen are the four main building blocks, and the Eurostat framework actually can be really aligned with this. So either you have a building block that represents the Eurostat framework or some sub item of it. So let me start simply with this green one, material life cycle and value chain. This is more or less the heart and the soul of a circular economy, looking at everything that is related to the material flows from the input to the use of materials, production, final consumption, and to the outputs of materials, often back to the environment. Then you have the interactions with the environment, so natural resource implications. So what does the use of materials, for example, mean for the changes of the natural asset base and the resource stocks? But you have also other environmental implications, such as related to the use of energy, climate change, air, water, land, soil, biodiversity, and so on and so forth. And then you have lots of socio-economic opportunities, such as supply security, I've already mentioned that, but also new markets, the labor markets, the jobs that are related to a circular economy, changing of consumer behavior, and all these kind of things. And then the other block, which is related to it, is responses and actions, which is basically the enabling conditions, the regulative part of a circular economy. And these building blocks, we try to find good measurement points, meaning indicators for each of these building blocks, which have also sub categories. And the task force, consisting of these many international organizations and many experts from countries, also tried to apply these so-called Bellagio principles about the monitoring of a circular economy. And at the end of the day, we came up with a few core indicators which address the main policy questions, which are kind of universal for each country. So one example is, for example, the national recycling rate, then complementary indicators which complement this message conveyed by the core indicators. So this could be, for example, recycling or recovery rates for a selected type of material, and then contextual indicators which help to understand the full story. This could be, for example, population growth or income levels or GDP, something like that. So here are a few examples of indicators for each of the building blocks. So responses and actions. For example, improve the efficiency of waste management. There are certain indicators related to it. Or taxes and government support for circular economy business models. On the material life cycle and value chain, so the circular material use rate would be one here, or production-based material productivity. Then the interactions with the environment, the natural resource applications, for example, measured through the intensity of use of renewable resources. Or there are also several environmental quality implications, such as the greenhouse gas emissions from production activities, and socioeconomic opportunities, gross value added related to circular economy sectors, jobs in circular economy sectors, or circular economy literacy, which is something which is important, but where we don't have actually an indicator yet. Lastly, let me say a few words about the measurement considerations. Renato has already mentioned the importance of the system of environmental economic accounting. And what we also did is trying to link this conceptual framework with the framework of the system of environmental economic accounting. And as you can see, there are lots of links. I don't have time now to go in all to the details, but this was very helpful to merge these two frameworks for understanding which of the indicators can be really based on the system of environmental economic accounting, and many of them actually can be. But of course, there are many indicators which need complementary information. And of course, there are also some indicators for which currently not methodologies are existing and which have to be developed. I have to stop here for the sake of time, but I would like to acknowledge also the contributions of many experts. Several of them are actually also here today. So I mentioned already Renato, but Miller from Statistics Austria is also connected and will be presenting, and was one of the main authors of this important document. And yeah, here is also the QR code where you can download this document, and I'm available for any further questions that you might have on this document. And I just would like to encourage you to download it and to read it. I think it's a very useful document where we can be proud of that this has been approved and published. Over to you, Christine. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael, for this very useful overview about part A of the CES guidelines. I open the floor for quick feedback or any immediate questions and answers. Are there any questions to Michael related to the guidelines for measuring circular economy? Michael will still be with us, and as he explained, he will also present later on part B, and the work done to produce part B of those guidelines. So if there are no questions now, and I cannot see any, I think we will move on. Yes. Thank you once again, Michael. Excellent presentation. No questions. Everything was clear, it seems. So then I suggest we move on directly with our next speaker. And I'm actually very pleased to have Mr. Yanis Bakas from the European Environment Agency here with us. We heard the name of the European Environment Agency and different experts several times today. So also Michael mentioned that there is long-standing cooperation with the European Environment Agency in various fields, including in the field of circular economy. And I'm pleased that Yanis will today present to us the work conducted by the European Environment Agency related to the Circularity Metrics Lab. And he will tell us a little bit more about that work and how actually this is relevant for our discussions on circular economy today. Yanis, the floor is yours. Please go ahead.
Thanks, Christine. I cannot see you anymore because I'm sharing. Please confirm that you can hear me and you can see a full screen of my presentation.
Yes, we can hear you and we can see the slides. Perfect.
Great, thank you. Let's hope it works. Thanks, first of all, for the invitation to present our own story, our own experience with monitoring the circular economy, the circular transition, as we call it. And I would like to take this opportunity to take you all through the process we have been through to develop the so-called Circularity Metrics Lab. And it's a story very similar to Michael's before. So the steps are more or less the same, but the results not exactly, because of course we had a little bit of a different scope and a little bit of different background in our own work. We also started with a definition of the circular economy, and that was necessary because there's many definitions out there, and you cannot start monitoring something you don't really understand, you haven't properly defined. So in our view, a circular economy is a set of principles that underpin the life cycle of products. So if you look at the life cycle of the entire EU economy, which starts with the input of raw materials, ends with an output of waste that is destined for disposal, incineration, and landfilling, implementing these principles in the product life cycle, such as designing them in a safe and sustainable manner, making sure that their production is as efficient as possible. When citizens are making choices, the sustainability should be part of the criteria for making the choices. And then when we actually own products, we should try to maximize their lifespan and to make better use of the ones we already have. And then finally, when waste is inevitably generated, it should be treated or viewed as a potential resource and not as something that needs to be get rid of. So implementing all this set of principles will take us closer to a circular economy. That's the idea. But then one needs to ask, how do you make that happen? So that's the big question. How are we in the process of implementing these principles? And with the we, I mean a lot of different things. And we decided to try to experiment with answering this question by developing this Circularity Metrics Lab. And it is a monitoring platform. It's not a monitoring framework because it's not based on very traditional type of data like Renato was speaking about before. Here we're trying to experiment with data that is a little bit more difficult to find. This is the reason why we call this a lab. So our approach overall is not to use to go into the more traditional data sources, but to try to find ways to monitor the inner circles of circular economy for which data is not readily available. So we developed this Circularity Metrics Lab, and it looks something like this. So each bucket, each cluster that you see on your screen is answering one headline question. First, do we have what we need to make circular economy happen? Do we have the enabling framework in place? And this constitutes of things like, do we know enough about circular economy to make it happen? Do we have the right knowledge? And academic research is producing enough material so that we can do it? Are circular economy policies in place that will promote circularity in the EU member states or in the EU as a whole? Then the second big question is, are businesses adapting to the concept? Are they developing business models that are able to generate revenue from circular business models instead of the traditional take, make, dispose models? Then consumers, are the consumers on board? How do they view circular economy? Are they positive? Are they willing to make the choices necessary when they are buying products that are more circular? And then finally, does all of this manifest in the material flows, in the materials and waste flows of our economy? Our scope is always the EU, but sometimes when data is not available, we try to use data from individual member states. But as a principle, we start with the EU. You can also see a color coding in the boxes there, and each box is a full-blown indicator. And the color coding, probably you have guessed by now, suggests whether the trend is positive or not, or negative, or maybe we cannot say if it's gray or it's very stable, as in yellow. And this overview of the indicators or the metrics we have in the Circularity Metrics Lab can tell you really, in a broad sense, that the enabling framework is more or less in place. Businesses have been trying to adjust and adopt more and more circular business models. The consumers are, to an extent, positive towards circularity, but perhaps we don't yet see fully the results of that in the material and waste flows of the EU economy. And I'll give you some results of the metrics that we have developed, and these are the examples. I will try to take you through are not based on very established data, so that comes, of course, with a certain level of uncertainty. But I think using alternative data sources sometimes reveals things that are more or less hidden. So, starting from the enabling framework, here is a graphic that shows how many of the EU member states have adopted national circular economy policies. This might be strategies or any kind of policy document that is labeled as circular economy. And you can see that this is, of course, increasing. It is, in a way, to be expected, because circular economy wasn't there as a concept much before 2015. And therefore, of course, you would see an increasing trend. But it's good that already in 2023, most of the EU member states had adopted circular economy policies. So that tells us that the political momentum or the political motivation for circular economy to happen is more or less in place. Moving on to the businesses, this is a processing of reports from very large companies operating in the EU. These ESG reports that also have environmental aspects in them. And there's an organization called MSCI is rating those as leader, average, or laggard in terms of their performance or their targets, the measures they have put in place to become more environmentally friendly. This is not, and this is also something we will be discussing later, this is not exactly the indicator we would have liked to have to monitor the uptake of circular business models in companies, because this rating is evaluating environmental performance at large. So it might be things that companies do to improve their carbon footprint, not only circularity, for instance. But it's the best we could find, and we have to make sure that we interpret the available data that we could find in a way that is fair to the question that we're asking, whether businesses are actually becoming more circular. So sometimes we have to operate with proxy metrics to answer the questions that we're posing, and that's something to pick up later. Then looking at consumers, here is the results of surveys, Eurobarometer surveys, asking questions to the EU citizens about their environmental concerns and their environmental behavior at large. And you can see the blue line, which is about waste issues. It has been constantly increasing since 20 years ago. Some others haven't. The willingness to pay for sustainable products, for instance, is going down, which is interesting, and we have to try to understand this better. But the more circular economy ones are quite high, like the recycling habits, or increasing, like the concerns over waste issues. And interpreting this indicator tells us that probably citizens are more or less willing to embrace the concept. Then the last bit was about material flows not yet highly circular, so we cannot see a lot of these enabling framework citizens and businesses all manifest in the material and waste flows. And what I want you to take home from this picture is the word stability. So not much is happening, and we'll get back to that later, I think. When you look at the key indicators like material footprint, waste generation, recycling, or the circular use of materials, they are more or less stable. So it's not reducing, but it's not improving either much. So the lessons learned, we really need to have a monitoring framework in place for circular economy. And circular economy, let's not forget, is a proxy to environmental degradation. We do circular economy because it's good for the environment. So monitoring that is also a monitoring proxy for the environmental performance of the EU economy in general. We consume 14 tons of materials annually in the EU, and we generate 5 tons of waste, which is quite high. And because of these consumption and waste generation, we trespass planetary boundaries, several of them. And that's a problem we need to deal with. Our circularity rate, the circular use of materials, is slightly above 12%, which is quite low, but still it's much larger than other world regions. So we should celebrate our achievements also. Similarly for recycling. We're stagnating our recycling, but we're still recycling almost half of the waste we generate. And we could even improve that by focusing on high quality recycling and the improvement of the secondary material markets in the EU. What's next? It's also a topic for later, but just to give you a flavor here, circular economy can deliver, besides environmental benefits, also benefits for the EU economy. When you look at security of resources, competitiveness, or just circular transitions. That means that the circular economy monitoring also needs to adjust or try to develop metrics to monitor these objectives of circularity. And I'm here only including one idea, that we try to find alternative ways to look at this. So we look at trade restrictions for importing into the EU selected critical minerals, aluminum, copper, and you can see them on the screen. And we can see that since 2010, these trade restrictions, the number of restrictions has been increasing, and lately has been skyrocketing since 2024 and also last year, 2025. That means that the access of the EU economy to these critical raw materials through imports is becoming more and more difficult. Therefore, circular economy possibilities for securing these critical minerals, for example, through recycling or making sure that the products using them last longer, these kind of strategies should have a more prominent role in securing these minerals for the EU economy. That's it. That's all from me. Looking forward to the discussions from now on. Thank you again for the invitation.
Thank you, Yanis, for this excellent presentation. I think you provided a very useful insight into the different aspects, also thinking a little bit outside the box and the classical frameworks on how to monitor circular economy. I'm opening the floor for any immediate questions to Yanis. Any Anyone who has any questions to Yanis? I mean, he said he will also be with us later on for the discussions, but if there are any questions now specifically to the work conducted by EEA within the Circular Economy Circularity Metrics Lab, please go ahead and ask the questions now. Anyone? It seems no. So thanks again, Yanis, for the excellent presentation. I'm sure we will have time for more discussions later on. So with this, anyhow, we are lacking a little bit behind the schedule. So with this, I would suggest we go immediately to the last presentation in this session. And I'm pleased to invite Mrs. Jana Tafi to introduce a little bit the circular economy monitoring in Eastern neighborhood countries, the activities that are implemented under the EU4 Green Recovery East project. Jana, the floor is yours. Please go ahead.
Good morning to everyone. My presentation will focus on monitoring circular economy in Eastern Partnership countries. Before just a brief presentation, my name is Jana Tafi. I am a UNECE consultant. I'm an economist, but I'm a statistician as well, specializing in data and indicators and on sustainability issues. It's blocked. Sorry, it's blocked.
Jana, if you like, we can share the presentation from our side, and you just tell us when we should move the slide, okay?
Okay.
Yeah, maybe then it works.
Oh, no, it went. I think it went.
Okay, so if it works, then please continue. Yeah, okay.
Okay. The project EU4 Green Recovery East set out ways how to measure progress toward a circular economy. Monitoring circular economy is based on legal and institutional frameworks. Legal frameworks support baselines, targets, and financing. Institutional capacity is developed to track and monitor the circular economy. Proposed monitoring framework includes priority and complementary indicators. Priority indicators are based and derived from European monitoring framework on circular economy, as well it's in line with UNECE guidelines for measuring circular economy. These indicators meet the information needs of policymakers and enable international comparisons. Next one. Monitoring the circular economy is crucial for Eastern Partnership countries. It helps them navigate the green economic model, adapt to scarce resources, and create a resilient society. The status of circular economy monitoring based on past monitoring experience and European accession process. It will help to reduce the burden of sustainable development and environmental management, and as well, it helps to implement European standards and methods. Next one. Yeah. The proposed set of indicators follows the framework of UNECE, OECD, UNIDO, Eurostat, and European Environment Agency. It includes 10 indicators from UNECE frameworks, 7 indicators from SDGs indicator frameworks, and 10 from UNIDO indicators. After selection and consultations, 12 indicators are proposed in priority. They are divided into 5 categories: production and consumption, waste management, secondary raw materials, competitiveness and innovation, global sustainability, and resilience. These indicators ensure data collection and reporting is transparent, consistent, and accurate for progress evaluation in circular economy. Next one. Eastern Partnership countries are making progress in implementing circular economy policies. Indicators and data were analyzed to identify the benefits and drawbacks. Eastern Partnership countries are at different stages in adopting the circular economy. Some have advanced policies related to waste management or circular economy. Others are developing their frameworks. The system is based on experience with monitoring SDG achievement, green economy indicator, and green growth. Gap analysis revealed data issues, not collected, outdated, incomplete, and low quality. It's also derived conclusion on indicators, methodology, policy relevance, data availability, mapping data, and mapping stakeholders. More details are in the country reports for Armenia, Moldova, and Ukraine. Next one. Gap analysis shows that latest and most complete indicators are on material footprint and food waste, and they are available on UN, DESA, UNEP, and national SDG portals. Indicators and data on waste generation, water stress, and greenhouse gas emissions and disposal waste are available at national statistical websites, but their quality is questionable. 2 sets of indicators are missing. They are consumption footprint, circular material import, export, internal trade, circular material use, investments, procurement, employment, recycling rates, waste management, competitiveness, innovation, and resilience. Monitoring and reporting pose challenges to indicators, governance and data management, impacting circular economy indicators, reliability. Next one. Analysis of monitoring on circular economy establish priority actions to address the adopting indicators and close gaps in data. This outline in draft national roadmap. It includes 7 phases, 33 steps, and recommended actions. Adopting priority indicators and data sets in line with European monitoring framework on circular economy should be a top priority. Steps for achieving this include unifying environmental and statistical monitoring with electronic government and digital transformation agendas, and digitizing processes, training staff to implement these indicators and adhere to European standards, and strengthen collaboration between institutions that produce environmental, economic, demographic, and trade statistic and circular economy data. Next one. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shana, for giving an overview about the activities related to the circular economy monitoring in Eastern Neighborhood countries, also for informing and giving a short overview about the roadmaps and the steps, how the countries can actually move on with monitoring a circular economy. I mean, this is just the start. So, I mean, this workshop also today is like a little bit of an intro to this topic. I mean, the indicators were discussed with the countries already, but of course, there's still much more to be done. And I therefore invite now any questions from participants to if there are any questions to Jana, please, colleagues, go ahead. Yes, just a second. So there is a question in the chat. Andri from UNIDO is asking whether the mentioned reports are publicly available.
Yeah, I have mentioned a report about circular economy monitoring. It's a result of this study, Armenia, Moldova, and Ukraine. It's recently published, and I think after consultation with the UNECE, UNIDA, it will be available to public and countries.
Exactly. So maybe I can also a little bit explain here. So the roadmap development, as said, is in its initial stage. So draft roadmaps are available, as Shana presented, and they are currently undergoing internal revision and will then, in the next step, be further discussed and consulted with the countries. So, I mean, as I said, those are drafts at the time being, and we are currently at the start of this whole process. But that's why we also wanted to have this workshop today to give a little bit of an intro to this whole topic on the different indicators, the different frameworks, but also the activities that are now implemented as next steps within this project. Are there any further questions? Yeah, I think, I mean, the question from Roman is going into this direction, what I just said. So as said, the roadmaps will be discussed in the next steps with all the countries. Jana already gave a little bit of an insight what's in the drafts. And I think maybe also based on the lessons learned today, we will review those roadmaps in case there is a need for, and continue the discussions with the countries and the different experts and participants. Are there any further questions? I don't see any further questions for the time being. Okay, so with this, thank you once again, Shana. And I think we will make a very short break. We are unfortunately a little bit behind, but for anyone who needs a short comfort break, please go ahead, but please be back in 5 minutes, actually. It's just really in case, so that no one misses any of the next very interesting presentations. Actually, also practical experience from the countries, which I think is very, very interesting. So please be back in 5 minutes, and we continue then with the next session on data sources, institutional collaboration, and stakeholder engagement. Thank you, colleagues.
Christine, it's 5 minutes past the hour. Can we start? Christine, can we start? Okay, I'm not getting feedback from from my colleagues, but since I'm chairing the next session and
I think it's okay. Sorry.
Okay, sorry.
I just heard you. Just needed to.
Okay, so I'm chairing the next
Yeah.
session, and I think it's not a problem that we have a bit of delay, but I try to catch up a little bit with my introduction so that we have more time for the substantive discussions. Yeah, so in session 2 we heard about the broader regional policy context for the circular economy monitoring, the circular economy action plan, existing indicator frameworks, research activities, and also the current status of circular economy monitoring in the EaP countries. And in session 3, now turn to the practical implementation of this work. We will discuss key aspects such as data sources, institutional collaboration, stakeholder engagement, and communication. And the session will present practical examples of the production and dissemination of circular economy indicators based on the examples of Germany and Austria. We will also explore how businesses, governments, and NGOs can engage with these indicators and use the results to support advocacy and strategic decision making. And finally, we will hear how circular economy information feeds into major European assessments, including the Europe's Environment 2025 report. So let me start with introducing you to Philipp Nuss and Wiebke Jander from the German Environment Agency, who volunteered to present their experience in producing and disseminating circular economy indicators. And I'm very grateful for having you. And over to you, Philipp or Wiebke. I'm not sure who is going to present. And we can see your screen.
Okay, perfect. And I hope you can hear us. Thank you very much,
Yes.
Michael, for the nice introduction. Great. So thank you for the opportunity to participate today and to discuss some of the work in this regard. My name is Philipp Nuss, and my colleague Wiebke Jander and I are both researchers at the German Environment Agency, UBA in short, working in the area of resource and circular economy monitoring. And together we will walk you through this presentation. So the presentation is split into 3 parts. We will first provide you a quick overview of the relevant policy framework. Secondly, Wiebke will describe the current process for developing a monitoring system. And finally, we will conclude with some ideas on challenges and opportunities on monitoring the circular economy in Germany. So first of all, why do we need circular economy monitoring systems at national scale? This table shows the diversity of resource and circular economy targets across European countries. What you see here is that each column is a country and each row is a type of target, for instance, on resource use and efficiency, on product making, waste-related targets, etc. And dark orange means binding legal targets. Light orange are the non-binding commitments. So you can see here, first of all, that there is a huge variation. For instance, France and Wallonia have over 20 targets each, while Denmark and the Czech Republic have just a few. And the legal approach differs too. For instance, France goes more binding with their targets. Denmark goes more voluntary. And there are also different priorities. Almost all countries target products and waste, but only two, here for instance, France and Switzerland, have binding targets on resource efficiency. So countries clearly focus on different parts of the circular economy. For Germany, for example, you can see that, for instance, the reduction of primary raw materials consumption, as well as some resource productivity targets, both at national and at regional scale, are part of the resource use and efficiency policy realm. For consumption-related targets, for instance, increasing the market share of eco-labeled goods is a target example for Germany. And there are various specific reuse and recycling targets, of course, for different material streams for those waste-related targets. So in a nutshell, this heterogeneity means that we can't rely on EU-wide indicators alone, but we need to tailor them a bit to the national context to actually track progress against the national level goals. And in Germany, the National Circular Economy Strategy was published in 2024. It provides the backbone of circular economy policy at national level. And in line with the EU circular economy definition, the strategy is guided, basically by the principle of preserving the value of raw materials and products for as long as possible by using materials more efficiently, keeping them in the loop, and by doing so, of course, reducing adverse impacts, for instance, environmental impacts. Overall, the strategy aims to lower Germany's primary raw materials consumption by mid-century, and it consists of three specific goals, namely to double Germany's circular materials use rate against the background also of the EU circular economy package and the targets there, to reach targets on security of supply against the background of the Critical Raw Materials Act at EU level, and also to lower municipal waste production. And it's important to note that the goals are seen as key to achieving overarching sustainability targets, such as, for instance, climate or biodiversity protection, competitiveness, etc. And one final point, the strategy makes also explicit links to the need for monitoring at the level of resource footprints, so accounting for materials or impacts embedded in trade. With that, I'll hand over to Wiebke for the next couple of slides.
Thank you, Philip, and hello to everyone. The strategy just mentioned does not only include goals and some indicators, but also calls for a monitoring system showing whether Germany is on track towards attaining these goals with the measures agreed. The first monitoring report is planned to be published in 2028. So far, 17 indicators have been identified in the strategies that could be reported immediately and that I will show in a minute. A commissioned research institution is making a gap analysis at the moment, checking whether circular economy indicators from other systems and other countries can be applied to Germany and what indicators need to be developed. The framework for selecting and developing indicators is derived from the strategy structure. You can see on this slide that it contains measures for action areas and cross-cutting issues that have been identified to be important for the German economy. Action areas mainly relate to materials such as metals and plastics, to products such as vehicles and clothing, and to actors such as public procurement. The cross-cutting issues take a closer look at specific topics related to the action areas, such as global flows or biogenic raw materials. Next slide, please. The indicators of the monitoring system relate to 4 groups. There are first national level circularity indicators that relate to total material flows in the German economy in total and to the aforementioned strategies goals that Philip presented. Then next, there are indicators relating to circular economy activities, to environmental and socio-economic developments. Third, there are action area circularity indicators for specific materials, products, processes, or systems. And finally, the monitoring system foresees indicators that track implementation of measures stated in the strategy. In the first group, available indicators from statistical offices are reported, such as the circular materials use rate. At the moment, we are looking into further developing these indicators, for example, showing the circular materials use rate for Germany by raw materials categories. The strategy does not refer to indicators for security of raw materials supply, but it's necessary because it's one of the goals. So we will propose some, most likely first focusing on the raw materials, aluminium, copper, and lithium for a start. In the second group, there are currently 4 indicators that you can see here on the slide in the orange box. And we plan to develop indicators for impacts of the circular economy on climate and biodiversity protection. Next slide, please. And in the third group, so far we have indicators on the circularity of plastics and textiles, and an indicator on the readiness of German companies, which comes from a survey of a research institute. And this relates to circular economy strategies. Finally, we have the fourth group of indicators, and as you can see on the next slide, we don't currently have indicators here because this depends strongly on the German government's decision to implement measures. And in these days, we're waiting for an action plan for measures that should be implemented in the short term. This is currently discussed in the government. It's expected any time now, and once we have these measures to be implemented in short term, we can develop here indicators together with the Ministry of Environment. The main institutions currently involved in setting up a circular economy monitoring system in Germany are outlined next. We have prepared here for this workshop an overview. This is not an official overview. It's just to show a little bit the structures in Germany. So the strategy was developed by the German Ministry of Environment in collaboration with other ministries and stakeholder groups and approved by the last federal government in December 2024. Since then, and also with the new government that was formed about a year ago, the strategy is being implemented. One measure, as I said, is setting up a monitoring system. The development of an indicator system mainly lies in the hands of the Ministry of Environment, our institution, the German Environment Agency, and external research institutions, which started working at the end of last year. A central player is the Ministry of Environment that gives long-term strategic orientation for monitoring and decides what indicators will be reported in the evaluation in 2028. The German Environment Agency is a research institution that plays 2 roles. So first, we support the system's development and function as a connecting point between framework and indicator development in research projects and data providers, including statistical offices and other agencies. Second, we also develop, measure, and analyze indicators ourselves. An important role have external researchers. They support the monitoring system by screening the literature for new indicators and databases, by identifying appropriate data sources, by developing new indicators and measuring them, as well classical and also innovative ones. An example of a potential new indicator is, or new indicators are those based on questions on circular economy in our agency's study on environmental awareness that is published every 2 years. In 2028, we aim to have an evaluation report that can show in much detail what further actions are required to establish a circular economy in Germany. And with that, I hand over to Philip again.
So thank you, Wiebke. Of course, the circular economy monitoring also faces challenges at national level. Some of them are summarized here. There are, of course, strategic gaps. Indicators often don't connect to the big picture goals like climate, jobs, or competitiveness, making maybe monitoring feel a bit disconnected from the actual policy priorities. There can be coordination challenges. Yeah, the responsibilities for the data collection, the reporting are split across agencies, which can require additional time and effort to get everyone aligned. As discussed previously, there can be data problems. Official statistics may not cover everything, or some of the key metrics might not be reported anymore, which requires us to use models or estimates. And there can be harmonization gaps, for instance, in the sense that the national, the EU, and the global methods may not always match up, which can also lead to confusion or to difficulties when explaining the different results or the different outcomes to the policy side. I won't go here into the details given the time, but this slide just gives you an overview of different research projects that we are currently undertaking to fill some of the data gaps. There is some work that looks specifically at metal flows and metal recycling, which is the one on the top left. But we've also worked with the JRC, for instance, to see to what extent the consumption footprint it reported at EU level and for the member states that Renato presented earlier as part of EU monitoring, how this indicator could be further adapted to the national context. The topic of material stocks is a very important one because stocks are the provider of services. They lock in energy and emissions during operation and maintenance. So stocks here mean long-living, durable goods, building and infrastructure, etc. And then there's other work on the targets, for instance, using some scenarios, and also on the concept diverse and indicators. So in conclusion, I would say that we have the building blocks. The existing EU statistics and frameworks provide a very strong foundation. So the task would be to adapt them to the national realities and to complement them with additional metrics. The national context, of course, matters. Countries have different targets and policy strengths, so monitoring systems should be tailored accordingly. And collaboration is important. Platforms like the EIONet by the EEA, but also this forum today by UNECE, they can enable countries to learn from each other and avoid reinventing the wheel. Tools like RACER evaluations, for instance, can help to ensure that the indicators are relevant and feasible and fit for purpose at the national level. And finally, we would say that it's good to start by defining clearly the national circular economy goals and then choose the indicators that actually measure what matters. So maybe the path, in summary, would be to build on what exists, to adapt to national needs, and then also to share with other countries what has worked at the national level. With that, thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Wiebke and Philip, for this presentation, and I really enjoyed the whole thing, but also the conclusions I think are very, very good. What was new for me, and thank you for this, was also this overview that you presented on targets and priorities in EU countries. So I think that's a paper that you did, and I think there is a link in the presentation. I would have loved to know about this already when we drafted part B of our CS framework, because there we tried also to give an overview about the national context of priorities. And I think this was also a very important conclusion. There is not one recipe that fits all, or there's not one set of indicators that fits all the countries. I think it's important to understand what is the national context and national priorities. And this was shown in several ways in the presentation. So thank you for this, also thank you for being transparent with challenges and possible solutions. I think this is also what many countries have in common, and we should not be shy in mentioning challenges. I think also important message here was the importance of a clearly defined governance structure when you think about developing national indicator sets. So you need to understand what are the roles and responsibilities of ministries, environment agencies, national statistical offices, the role of important agencies like the mineral agencies that I mentioned, also academia that can help to fill information gaps. So, of course, it should not hinder countries from starting publishing indicator sets with data which is available, but I think you should then gradually develop a kind of stakeholder framework which is clear and where roles and responsibilities are assigned when it comes to producing information about circular economy. And of course, priority should be always related to what are the national targets. So this is an important starting point. So fantastic presentation. Thank you very much for this. I learned a lot, and I think it kind of strengthened many of the information or kind of recommendation would like to give in this webinar, that you have to understand your own national policy context when you develop this kind of indicator sets and how to do it in the best way. Okay, thank you very much for this. We will have now another presentation from Austria. Here we come more from the Statistics Office point of view. So I would like to introduce you to Mila Notch from Statistics Austria, who will complement the presentation that we just heard from Germany from the Austrian perspective. And Mila, we can see your presentation and the floor is yours. And sorry, before I hand over the floor, if you have any questions to Philip, Wiebke, or Miller, please use the chat and post the questions there. And after this presentation, we will come back to your questions. So, Miller, over to you.
So, hello, everyone. So I will give you an overview of the situation in Austria. I will tell you about the policy context and about the development of the circular economy monitoring system in Austria. I will show the proposed indicators and some developments of the trends and how they are presented in Austria, and all that from the point of view of a statistical office. So the next slide, please. So we have in Austria, we have the Austrian Circular Economy Strategy since 2022, and it includes some quantified goals, which are mostly based on indicators from material flow accounting. So there are goals for DMC, RMC, circular material use rate and resource productivity. And one more goal is related to household material use, which is still a bit more challenging from the measurement point of view. Yes, and then since January this year, we also have an industrial strategy, and it has 6 large goals. One of them is to strengthen sustainable and circular production. And that means that circular economy is no longer only on an environmental agenda or an agenda on its own, but it's part of this broader agenda. The next slide, please. So the monitoring framework of the Austrian circular economy strategy is still a bit under development, but it has 3 main instruments. There is a progress report every 2 years. The first one was published 24, and the next one is coming this summer. And it presents the core indicators related to these quantitative goals and activities implemented and planned next steps. Then there is every 5 years there shall be a more comprehensive evaluation, and for that an indicator set is being developed. And the third part are resource use reports, which have already a longer history. The first one was published in 2011, but now it's officially part of the monitoring framework of the circular economy strategy. And there is a task force consisting of ministries, experts from science, business, civil society, and this task force accompanies the implementation and evaluates the status. The next one, please. So for this comprehensive evaluation, an indicator set has been in development, and yes, the important starting points for that have been the EU monitoring framework and also the UNECE guidelines were consulted, and there was the Austrian Society for Environment and Technology was commissioned to lead this development. And in first step, there was a group of experts from the representing ministries, Statistical Austria, Environment Agency, Austrian Institute of Economic Research, and universities. There were a lot of interviews, workshops, and a proposal was prepared. And this proposal included quite broad, yes, broad. The discussions were broad, and there were diverse indicators proposed, and then some of those were selected for a monitoring concept, and the principles for these selections were that the indicators, of course, must be CE relevant, they must be measurable, methodologically robust, and also available as time series, and that led to that most of those indicators that are now proposed, they are actually mostly based on official statistics, and also most of them are indicators that also are part of EU monitoring framework or are core indicators of also proposed in this UNECE guidelines. Next slide, please. So here we see the first part of the indicator set. There are indicators on resources and circularity. These are indicators from material flow accounts or waste statistics. And on the right side, you see that these all are also part of the EU monitoring framework, and the first three of them are also core indicators of this UNECE guidelines. And then we have some indicators related to economy, like investments, employees, gross value added. Then the next slide, please. So, and also included are indicators on repair and reuse, innovation, and raw material security. The next slide, please. So now I show you some trends about the material and resource use in Austria, and how some key messages as they are presented in the resource use reports. So here we see the material consumption in Austria. Since 1960, it has risen from about 100 million tons to 154 million tons. But if we look at it as per capita consumption, then we see that actually the biggest part of this increase is due to the increase of the population. And we see that the biggest part of the consumption is because of non-metallic minerals, followed by biogenic materials, and this consumption is depends very much about economic developments. We see the financial crisis in 2009, and we see, okay, the COVID didn't really cause any reduction of the consumption, but after the COVID, after the lockdowns, we see kind of rebound where the construction sector was quite intensive, and there was the consumption rose, and now recent years we see some decline, which is mainly due to that the fact that the construction sector is kind of in a recession. Next slide. The Austrian material footprint is larger than the domestic material consumption, meaning that the global raw material demand from final consumption is greater than the material consumption within Austrian borders. And this material footprint is also high in comparison to the EU average. Next slide, please. So the there is this general goal that the resource use should be decoupled from economic growth, and that means that the resource productivity should increase. And in Austria, the resource productivity has been increasing if we compare 2022 with 2000, but this has been a relative decoupling and not absolute, because there is no real decline in DMC to be seen. And the goals of this circular economy strategy are ambitious, and to reach them requires a profound societal transformation. The next slide. So now we can have a look at the quantitative goals of the circular economy strategy. So domestic material consumption was a bit lower in 22 than in the previous years, but still yes, if we want to reach the goal 2030, something has to happen quite fast to reach that. And the material, for the material footprint, the target of 7 tons per capita, that's for the year 2050. So there is still some time until there, but it is a very ambitious one. So each year that should be reduced by 0.5 percent points to be there. Yes, and it's only possible by means of a real transformation of the economy. Next slide, please. Circular material use rate and resource productivity. We here also here we see some positive development in 2022, but yes, a long way to go, and something has to happen quite fast here too. Next slide, please. So at Statistics Austria, we of course also publish the data related to the material flow accounting. We have a dedicated web page and tables, databases, so on. But we also have an own website dedicated to circular economy, and it presents this Sankey diagram on material flows and also the circular material use rates. Next one, please. And so right now, Statistics Austria is implementing a project on further development of monetary CE indicators. So for the ministry, so the objectives are to improve the national measurement of CE-related output, cross-value added, employment, and exports. And yes, the first step is to look at how this should be defined nationally as by means of, also in the sense of CE sectors and activities that should be taken into account. EGSS will be one of our starting points, and we want to also take into account the methodological work carried out by Eurostat so far. We are now at the very beginning, but yeah, and the results, we will have results until the end of September. Next slide, please. So just some words about the monitoring of the industrial strategy. So this monitoring is now in development, and there is the Austrian Productivity Board, which will expand its annual productivity reports to include the measurement of these goals. And for that, there is also a task force for the evaluation of the annual results, and there will be an annual report. And already now this Austrian Productivity Board is publishing a set of a large set of indicators in this productivity report dashboard, and it also includes indicators from material flow accounting. Yes, but yes, this set of key performance indicators is in development, and we have also been asked for our opinions of some proposals that are included there. So yes, it's just nice to be part of this broader context too, and yes, to see that our indicators are getting more and more attention. The next slide, please. So I have listed some of key challenges that I see. These are mainly methodological ones. So from the point of view of statistics and of the work that we are doing, yes, a lot of that is related on the monetary indicators. So yeah, but first large point is that that circular economy is, as concept, is well defined, but somehow the operational definition of circular economy sector, there is no internationally agreed definition of that in the sense of activities or products that should be taken into account. So that's a little bit challenging. And of course, these are strategies related to refuse, rethink, reduce. They are difficult to measure at macro level. Yes, and the physical indicators, they are more robust, but the material footprint is clearly one that it's still a challenge, because there are different methods to calculate that exist, and they lead to different results. We used for that a national tool before, but now we have started to report using the Eurostat tool in order to be in line with other European countries at least. Yes, and the timeliness of waste statistics is a bit challenge for us, because it's published only every second year. So that is a challenge for the timeliness. The next one, please. Yes, the positive side. So I see it positive that this growing policy demand, the increase in visibility and importance of the indicators that we use, we get more questions, and it's of course for work for us, but it means that the indicators are used, and yes, I'm happy about that. Yes, and that they are integrated in this broader strategy, it makes them even more important and offers chances for even more holistic monitoring. There are the recent developments internationally, so the international standards and the classifications have been developed so that they are better for the circular economy monitoring, and of course these frameworks and guidance a lot of has happened, and a lot is happening, so that will bring this work further. And I'm also hopeful as regards new and emerging data sources, because in circular economy field there is a lot happening. So that was my last slide, and yeah, I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Milla. So I think also a lot of very useful information included in this presentation. So I liked it that you started also with the showing how to disseminate this info, how Austria disseminates information. So this Austria does it through the Circular Economy Progress Report every 2 years. So there's already a dissemination program, and then also the plan of having a more comprehensive report. So I think this is really important means to increase visibility and interest of this information. And you mentioned it also in the opportunities to have a more holistic view by linking it with other strategies, such the industry strategy. So I think this is also a very important aspect, that we are not thinking in silos, but we understand how things are linking with each other, and how statistical office actually can reuse information for many policy purposes. This is the beauty of official statistics, to reuse the same information for various strategies. I think also interesting was to see that you started with 15 indicators, so a relatively small set. And also that the ECE framework together with the Eurostat framework provided a good starting point for the national discussion of what could be useful indicators. And also, I think these task forces that you have mentioned as a kind of formalization of stakeholder engagement. So I have from the beginning a common understanding what is necessary for the Austrian strategy and what is feasible to be produced. I think is also a good case example that can be applied, hopefully also in other countries. So it leads me back a little bit to what we heard from Germany. What I think Philip presented, this big picture of the stakeholders that are involved or should be involved. So so I think very useful take-home messages. Thank you very much for sharing this, also for sharing the challenges, and also the plans to go in the direction of having more indicators on the monetary side. And I think that's also a good message. You can start with what you have there. Very often it's the material or waste information, which can already help to start developing a set of national circular economy indicators, and then you can gradually expand it to more challenging indicators and parts of the framework. Thank you for this. Not sure if the question, I didn't see any specific question to Miller other than praises of of your presentation. We have one from Nick. I'm reading it out. It's in the chat, but for interpretation. So Nick was asking colleagues from Uber Germany, how much is process further complicated by the federal structure of Germany, and that implementation actions may be taken at the state level or land level. And the answer from Wiebke was, as there are many circular economy activities on the state and regional level, and implementation strongly depends on this level, we see the federal structure as very useful. We are checking if subnational indicators are helpful for the national monitoring system, which is mainly designed to inform national level policy making. So thank you very much for this reply. So colleagues from Germany and Austria are still staying with us. So if you have any questions to... okay, somebody is raising the hand. Roman, please take the floor.
Thank you for very detailed presentation. I have only two questions. First question in general for colleagues from Germany and from Austria. What are the biggest challenge in monitoring circular economy at national level? Listen, learn, I don't know, related to digital tools or challenge related with working with company. Maybe they don't want to provide some information. For us, it is important because if you know challenge, you know how to prepare for them. And the second question is for Mila from Statistics Austria. As I understand, circular economy is monitored by National Bureau of Statistics of Austria. If yes, how do you collaborate with UBA in this exercise? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very clear questions. So the first one was to both country presenters or three country presenters, more on the biggest challenges. You mentioned some in your slides, but maybe we can focus on, let's say, the single biggest challenge that comes to your mind. I'm not sure. Wiebke, you want to start?
Yes, thank you for the question. From my point of view, the biggest challenge is the trade-off between relevance of the goals and being able to measure them, so data availability. So sometimes, and to balance this well, sometimes you have overarching goals that are simply not measurable, and then you don't know whether you're on track on achieving them. Then But then also there are, if you base your goals only on available data and indicators, and the goals are very closely linked, you may not incentivize new indicator development to really address the large environmental and societal challenges that we are facing. So yeah, I think it is this balancing the relevance of the goals and their measurement.
Thank you, Wiebke. Mila, you want to add something? The single biggest challenge.
Yes, I think it's there are these indicators that are based on official statistics that have already a longer tradition, and that's why it are quite easy to deliver. And but then there are a lot of like policy question needs what the policy makers would like to measure, but always when it's something new, it gets more challenging. Like I given just an example of a wish about resource productivity broken down by sectors or industries. It's something resource productivity as we have defined it is for the whole economy, and the concept doesn't include breaking it down to sectors. But I understand the what is behind this wish, and yes, and then we should have start to think what would this mean, or what kind of indicator could offer something like that. But all such things are then challenging and more complicated.
Thank you. So you echo also what Wiebke said, it's relevance versus feasibility.
Yes,
Is okay. Yeah, okay.
And about the second questions, to clarify, no, so we are not, at Statistics Austria, we are not leading of course, not the circular so the monitoring of the circular economy strategy, that is the ministry. And but as yes, the quantitative goals are based on material flow accounting, so that alone makes our involvement important, and there is a lot of exchange with the ministry, and yes, and we are the ones who produce this data, and that's why we are closely involved. We were already also involved in this working group that was preparing the monitoring framework. But yes, we are the data delivers and one of the stakeholders taking part in this monitoring work, but not leading it.
Thank you. So I also hear from you that the statistical office plays also an important role in advising the others in choosing indicators and what is really feasible. So to try to match in the best way the relevance that is defined by others with what is feasible. Is this correct?
Yes, that's one task, and another task is to help at the interpretation of those indicators. Why do we see some trend, and what does it mean? What does this indicator say, and what it does not say, because it's not always so clear.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. We are running a bit late, unfortunately. I don't want to stop a very good conversation here, because this is actually what this webinar is about. But we have a segment in the next session where we will come back to some of these issues, and maybe in a shorter way, because some of them have already been addressed. But if there are more questions, please post them in the chat and we will come back to it. But thank you, Wiebke, Philipp, Miller, for sharing your national experience. That was extremely useful and interesting, also what we could see from the questions. And I would like to introduce you now to Tatiana Chernyavskaya from UNIDO, so the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, who will give you an overview on how businesses, governments, and NGOs can engage with the monitoring framework for circular economy, report data, and use the results for advocacy and strategy. I understand you're in Japan right now. It's already in the evening, so over to you, Tatiana.
Thank you very much, Michael, and good morning, good afternoon for everyone joining this webinar. Is my screen in my
yes, but you're in editing mode,
presentation?
so can you please change to presentation mode?
Yes, I'm trying to do that. Just a sec.
It's still in editing mode, so.
Does it work now?
I saw it. Yeah, now it's there. Perfect.
Okay, thank you very much. So today I have a pleasure to speak about engaging stakeholders, and I think that's one of the interesting stems from what was already discussed, that we are producing those indicators with specific goal for them to be used. And of course, engaging different stakeholders is exactly what we need, not only to formulate the demand-driven approach to indicators, and also to review what kind of indicators are available, but also to stimulate that those indicators are interpreted and used for specific purposes with clear understanding of limitations, and as well as options to go beyond the available data. Just to set the scene, as UNIDO is mostly dealing with industrial development, and our primarily target group is industry and enterprises as economic drivers. It's very important for us to specify that that particular focus group is in the core of circularity monitoring from our point of view. The context again is that resources and circularity, which we are discussing today as a driver of keeping those resources in use, is also a driver for certain crises which we are facing, in particularly with regards to the biodiversity, availability, the climate change. It's not only energy, but we are also targeting resource use, as well as, of course, pollution, which use of resources and the extraction is actually accountable for. So for us, we are defining circular economy as industrial economy with particular definition and limitations, which we are looking at with regards to products and their value in the economy. And of course, the enabling environment for introducing circularity and actually deciding on how to measure it with specific indicators is particularly important from the point of view of introducing the tools which those users and stakeholders of decision making can be benefiting from. In this case, the digital solutions, how to assess your circularity as a company, or how to assess the circularity footprint of a particular strategy, particular partnerships which are established to actually define and promote circular solutions, as well as different collaborations between those stakeholders and groups are particularly important. We've heard a lot about the complexity of circular economy and the selection of targeted indicators, which are then defining the necessary measures to improve the level of circularity. And those are also reflected in the certain interaction between business and finance, for example, or how the policies is are formulated and governance is shaped, and how the industry is defining its footprint in the overall system. So the actors which are actually benefiting from circular economy introduction are quite clear. We have, of course, consumers. All of us and each of us are dictating whether circularity is the choice which industry makes, which government is supporting, because we are driving by our demand what is happening in the economy. Of course, the businesses, because they make decisions on what and how they are producing, and whether they are designing those products to last, or they have the productivity embedded into the decisions on which value chains to engage. Of course, the governments are a particular actor for that specific topic, because they are shaping the framework for decision making, benefiting from the potentially available indicators and statistics, but at the same time following some statistical or rather political agenda, which might be following specific interests of specific parties. And of course, the intermediary institutions like NGOs and academia, as well as civil society organizations, are of particular importance for circular economy as such, and for enabling its measuring its implementation. So the economic benefits are coming together with environmental and social benefits from circular economy introduction, and they are driving whether new business activities and models are introduced, whether emissions of greenhouse gases are reduced, or whether new innovative technologies are in place. So all of those benefits associated with circular economy introduction are actually the drivers for demand towards measuring circular economy and associated frameworks, which we are discussing today. Whether we are able to connect those policies and those decisions to those benefits and support those decisions with available statistics is another question, and I'm glad that we are discussing it today in detail. And of course, the role of governments in this case is particularly important, as they enable consumers with information on more circular products, and at the same time, businesses are moved to become more circular in their production and in their products by exactly the decisions which governments is taken based on the available indicators and analysis of frameworks. So the circular economy monitoring is really providing us feedback to act, and how we act can translate into measurable indicators in its turn. So the evidence-based policy is driven by those indicators, and some investment decisions are coming based on the statistics which we are facing as part of the framework. At the same time, engaging stakeholders in actually using the monitoring frameworks is often quite challenging, because there are institutional responsibilities of specific ministries or agencies are quite fragmented. The data which is available from private sector and can be reliable is again limited and not really present to the extent possible. There are those coordination gaps between policy and data producers, exactly what was mentioned by Mila recently, that sometimes there is a need or a demand from policy makers in terms of certain indicators, but feasibility of making those indicators available or reliable is quite limited. And of course, engaging all of those stakeholders in producing the data and understanding its limitations is particularly important. So the ways to actually use and engage further stakeholder are quite specific. So in particular, we can start from what is already there. Yes, the statistical data, and in this case, Christina already mentioned that green economy indicators were already in place, and connecting them as existing national data sources to actual demand for circular economy indicators is the right way forward. We should not speak about something completely new. We are speaking about going into circularity, using and interpreting available data sources the way the circular economy framework is asking us or dictating us. So the new indicators, of course, are still necessary, and they are coming, but they are to be implemented gradually and step by step, more focusing on functionality rather than on scale and availability of all possible indicators at once. Quantitative and qualitative information is equally important. Sometimes we can go for statistics and raw data, and sometimes we need to have more qualitative approach to tell the story and to make the stakeholders understand why we are speaking about certain notions. And of course, nobody wants to report twice or three times. So we have to have like single reporting system where those stakeholders which are demanded to be reporting or meaning generating the statistics or input for those indicators, that they are not doing it several times. Yes, so we have to find ways to actually bring together those reporting systems and use them interchangeably rather than in parallel. So in this case, we are helping in particular businesses to look at their data and providing technical guidelines and capacity buildings to support their data consumption, data production, and harmonization in this particular case. So specifically for groups which we have in mind, for governments, the coordination function is particularly important. We know, and we saw now that in the case of Austria, the Ministry of Environment was in the driving seat for circular economy strategy, but now it's also the policy on industry is driven by other ministries, and having those initiatives coordinated is particularly important to have the indicators further developed. Integrating those monitoring systems into actually useful national strategies is making them grow and making government officials to have an additional step towards actually implementing those monitoring and indicators generating steps, and of course relying on the available statistics. And I'm glad to hear that there is this experience already for policies, and prioritization of specific steps is important. For for non-governmental organizations, academia, civil society, their role would be to provide additional data somehow through their activities. They are generating the data, and sometimes this data can complement, can fill the gap and support the models which are produced by statisticians to the cases where data is not available. The interpretation of indicators, again, can be an important role for those groups because of the complexity of indicators, and of course translating those indicators into the understandable and clear messages is particularly important. And of course, for businesses, it's important to have data collected. That's the first step, and we face it very much in our resource efficiency assessments of enterprises, that sometimes data is not available or not considered to be a priority or not reliable because of the double reporting, if you want. We also are facing that the data collected at the business level is not aligned with operational or other indicators which are characterizing circularity. And it's very important to have those aggregating institutions like industry associations to participate in collecting data and providing it to the decision makers, so that this bridge of collaboration between numerous businesses and actual aggregators and decision makers is there. So I will briefly provide a very specific example to showcase what I was speaking about. Industrial waste mapping is one of our methodology, and in this particular exercise, it was difficult for us to identify the data on resources consumed by particular enterprises in specific regions, and we had to collaborate with statistical bureaus, but also come back to industry to collect the data which we were supposed to use in those industrial waste maps. And it worked out because we were working at a smaller than national level. We're working at regional level, and results confirm that yes, the data which is available at the national level and is not even qualified or classified as circular economy data is already driving some decisions which companies are making at the local level, in particular when it concerns their collaboration with regards to exchange of byproducts, with regards to recycling responsibilities, or data-led decisions which they have to make to increase compliance or collaboration at the regional level with regards to use of waste or secondary resources, as we call it. Another example is Foresight. Again, it's a tool to bring the decision makers into the same room, around the same table, to discuss the future of circular economy in this particular case. And it's done in a short, mid, and long-term perspective. And here, statistics and indicators which are brought into the decision-making of particular importance, and to ensure that language of the stakeholders is aligned, and those participants are speaking the same terms, using the same terms for the same notions is of importance. That we learned also in the practical application of Foresight in Ukraine, where we saw that, for example, in plastics and packaging, to identify the packaging limits and limitations on recycling requires actually understanding on what kind of infrastructure can be developed to treat the packaging. But for that, one needs also the input material input data on how much of that packaging materials and in which composition is available. So very briefly, that data should be clearly aligned with policy formulation, which all the stakeholders are interested in, because that will then dictate the rules of the game. We have to support innovation by using those indicators because, for example, the reference to productivity per unit of input is important for business to make their decisions and compare with available peers information. For sustainability and regional cooperation, those indicators are helping us to facilitate shared visions and collaboration, but at the same time strengthen the integration of specific value chain into the regions. And also we are reducing risks. The more we know about what materials are available, what levels are there for decision making in terms of recycling, the more informed and clear policies we can develop and reduce the risk of not having the understanding from others who are not involved in the initial decision making. For next steps, we can consider identifying very preliminary selection of value chains to prioritize those which would drive engagement of stakeholders at each level and would make engagement a priority. Of course, the investment decisions and infrastructure gaps would also raise interest, I think, from all the groups which I mentioned, starting from government and ending with business. And of course, the national roadmaps and what was already demonstrated with regards to situation in Austria and Germany are particularly important for generation, but also for understanding of available metrics and understanding and data. So that data and indicator framework, which we are now creating in the Eastern Partnership countries, is also building for us capacity, which
Sorry, can you wrap up within 1 minute, please?
Yes, thank you. Which every one of those stakeholders requires to understand circularity with confidence and to be able to collaborate on implementing the circular solutions. And that was my last slide. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tatiana, and sorry for rushing you through. But thank you very much for making the case for the importance of industry and businesses in general and finance in this work as stakeholders and actors of interest. And really having them on board is also important for increasing the use of these indicators. And I think what is also important, what you did is also looking at not only at the macro and meso perspective, like we heard from Germany and Austria, but also this micro perspective that an individual company might be interested in to understand the level of circularity. So what we need at the end of the day in an ideal world would be a set of indicators that actually addresses all these requests in a coherent manner. So and I think this should not be forgotten when planning sets of indicators and also when bringing industry on board. So they're important drivers for demands. You also mentioned engagement improves data quality and ownership. That's a very important aspect. And I think also the offer of you needed to provide various types of support from technical guidance and to capacity building is one that should be echoed here. Again, if there are questions to Tatiana, please use the chat for that. We are running very late behind time, unfortunately. This is why, without further ado, I will ask Yanis to continue and to talk a little bit about the circular economy in Europe's Environment 25 report. So how to make use of the data for dissemination. Yanis, over to you.
Thank you. Michael, let me see.
We can see the presentation. You have to switch to present.
Yeah, it's a bit slow. Sorry. Yeah. I'm hoping you can see it now. I cannot see you again.
Yes.
Good. Thank you.
Yes, you're good.
Thanks. Well, the point of this presentation is to show how data collected and indicators developed around circular economy can feed into the narrative of larger assessments that tell a story about how things are going or what are identifying problems to address. And for this purpose, I am going to use or refer to the big report that we published a few months ago, Europe's Environment 2025. And that is an integrated assessment of the status, the state, and also the outlook of the European environment, again, scoping the EU as a whole. In this report, there's separate narratives dealing with different environmental policy agendas. One of those, of course, is the circular economy, and I will try to take you through that story, making the case for a circular economy in Europe's environment, using a lot of the data and indicators that we have already talked about, I think, today quite a bit. So, first of all, the natural resources issue is dealt with in the report as a whole. And this is important to clarify because natural resources can also be land, which is in Europe the most intensively cultivated land in the world. And we are in desperate need of that. And also water, which is shaped by our natural environment and also and used in, of course, in different systems, for the consumption and production systems that we have in Europe. But I think the main focus of today is the raw materials. And raw materials is something quite broad because it includes things like sand and gravel, which is bulky stuff that we use in really many different applications, mainly construction, but also tiny bits of raw materials such as the critical minerals. And they all fall under the premise of the circular economy. So let's try to understand a bit better what is the life cycle of these raw materials in our economy. The way we analyze resources and specifically raw materials in Europe's environment is by looking at different provisioning systems, consumption and production systems. These systems are in place because there's demand for goods and services by citizens, governments, companies, etc. And these systems are triggered so that they can deliver these goods and services, things like energy to heat our homes or food to eat, etc. Then, each of these separate systems again is relying on natural resources as food, as feed, in order to generate the goods and services that we all consume. So the concept of the natural resources, and in particular the materials that we use, need to be understood by looking separately or altogether systemically these different systems. Some of those have been performing well over the past years. For instance, energy and industry. That's why you can see they're colored in green, because we have managed to produce a quarter of the energy we need through sustainable energy sources, and because the air emissions, in particular from our industry in Europe, have been decreasing steadily over time. But other ones, like the food and the mobility systems, are a bit more resistant to change, and they keep on consuming quite a substantial amounts of materials and natural resources to produce the goods we need. That means that they are less efficient. Then, in order to validate or to assess the performance of these systems, we have to look at some of the major data and indicators in order to complete the story in Europe's environment. And this one, for instance, shows the material footprint. We consume 14 tons per capita in Europe of materials. That is more or less stable since 2010. Maybe it goes sometimes a little bit up, sometimes a little bit down. Overall, today is a bit lower than in 2010. But as you can see from the line here, the assessment I can make on this graph is that there is stability, there's stagnation in the material footprint. That's about the trend, but the level of materials that we consume is really high. It's unsustainable to continue consuming this many tons per capita. And we've heard before by Germany, Austria, that the targets they are operating with, which are maybe non-binding and maybe far in the future, but still the sustainability area is probably way below, maybe half of that quantity. Linking that to the different systems that I showed before, we can see that housing and food together is about almost three quarters of the materials that we use. Of course, that's not the whole story, because housing, for instance, which is more than half of Europe's material footprint, is using a lot of these bulky materials that are most of the times less environmentally relevant, sand and gravel and different kinds of aggregates. Looking at waste, the other end of the pipe, if you will, the waste generation, it stands at 5 tons per capita. What does that tell us, though? First of all, the trend is very similar to the material footprint. It goes sometimes a little bit up and sometimes a little bit down, but overall there is stability since 2010. It's slightly again today, a little bit lower than in 2010, but overall the line is quite stable. Construction and mining and quarrying as sectors are the ones responsible for more than 60% of the waste that we generate, followed by waste manufacturing and municipal waste in the households. The main indicator we have for circularity in Europe is the so-called circular material use rate, which looks at how much of the total material that we use comes from secondary materials or recycling. And again, this is more or less stable. The similar story to the other two. There's a slight uptick in recent years, reaching 12%, a bit more than that in the latest data. But overall, there is stability. So we have been trying with different ways, different kinds of levers to increase or decrease these different kinds of indicators in Europe, but we haven't been very successful so far. So that's one way of looking at this. But another way is to look at the GDP. And the story evolves if you add the purple line in your screens, the economic performance of the EU. So if the GDP line outperforms the other ones. So putting the other three circular economy indicators I'm showing here in the perspective of the economy, we can argue that there has been a modest decoupling of environmental or circular impacts, let's say, from the economic development. We have been managing to grow the economy without asking for more materials from nature, without generating more waste. And that is probably a good story. We could do more because the other side of the coin is, of course, that the levels of our consumption and waste generation are unsustainable. But overall, we can celebrate a modest decoupling of material use from economic growth. This picture you've seen earlier today, it is the same graph now in green color, but it is our own definition of circular economy. But I'm not going to go into that again for this presentation. What I wanted to stress is that circular economy is a systemic approach. You cannot do a circular economy by intervening piecemeally in different parts of the economy. All these principles that the circular economy is based on need to be accelerated and implemented at the same time and pace if we want circularity to increase in Europe. How do we do that, though? We do that by, first of all, increasing the efficiency of our systems in Europe, making more use of the materials that we already have. For instance, during the use of products, by focusing on repair, on reuse, and on after we use the products, by making sure they are recycled and the secondary materials are returned back into the economy. So improve the efficiency. But that is probably going to make a difference in the trend that you saw in the indicators before. If we really want to address the levels of material consumption that we have in Europe, we need to couple this with rethinking our entire provisioning systems by, for instance, avoiding unnecessary use of materials. For instance, rethinking the design of products, making them more circular. So overall, the data and the indicators that we have been using to monitor the circular economy can be used in this kind of assessment report to conclude on more systemic issues in the EU environment. And the main message of Europe's environment is that we need to make changes that matter, address the root causes of the unsustainability in the different production and consumption systems that we have in Europe. That's it from me. Thanks again for the invitation and the opportunity to present our messages. Of course, if any questions, happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Yanis, for giving this good example of European storytelling. So I think this is not only interesting from the European perspective, but also from how we can convey the message in a good way on different levels. So this could be also a learning exercise for the country perspective. And also, I think this is a good case for showing that we need good indicators in all levels up to the European level so that we can tell the good story. So, and also a good case of showing how the European indicator framework can be used or is used for this kind of storytelling. Thank you very much for this. For the sake of time, I think I leave it here for the time being. Again, as if there are any questions or additional comments, please use the chat. And I would like to hand over now to Christine to chair the next session.
Thank you, Michael. And thanks also from my side to speakers in the previous session. Yanis, Tatjana, Philip, Wiebke, and Mila. I think we heard now very useful presentations on practical experience in measuring circular economy, but also a little bit of an status assessment where we actually stand. In our next session, session 4, we will look into some challenges, but also potential solutions in monitoring circular economy. And this session will be divided in 2 parts. First, we will hear 2 presentations, actually in this case from the UNECE Secretariat. First of all, Michael will, as I have announced already in the morning, present and provide a short overview about the CES guidelines for measuring circular economy part B, a practical guide for measuring progress. This presentation will be followed by a very short presentation from my side about the use of circular economy indicators for an upcoming assessment. And then actually the second part of this session will look into an interactive discussion with our experts who presented already in the morning. And we will touch upon various questions. But I will now give directly the floor to Michael to introduce part B, and I see already the slides on the screen. So please, Michael, go ahead.
Yeah, so I will try to make it really super short for the sake of time. So I have already said that in our EC task force, we have developed part A, which is the conceptual framework, and part B, which is more a hands-on guidance on how to produce the indicators. And this is based on existing indicator methodologies, but also on experiences by countries, on how to do things in practice. And we have heard many things already today. And in these hands-on guidelines, we really try to put this all together in a way that it is useful for those who have to produce these indicators. So as I said, the main purposes of this document is to assist countries in producing these indicators, but also in finding good ways in disseminating them. So what you can find in this practical guide, I have to say it's not published yet. It has been completed. It has been and it will be sent very soon for an electronic consultation. So you will have a copy of this in your hands very soon. And we really would like to invite you to actively contribute to this consultation process. So what includes this guide? A short summary of the part A of the conceptual understanding of that framework. So the part B should be a kind of a standalone document. It discusses how to develop and use a national set of circular economy indicators. So there's lots of reference made to what we have already discussed, that you need a strategy, you need national objectives or targets, you have international indicator sets as a reference. Then how to produce these indicators. So for some key indicators, there's really hands-on methodological guidance on how to do it. So not only the formula, but also how you can use existing data or statistics to produce the indicators, how you can overcome certain gaps. Institutional collaboration. We have several case examples included, and there is also a certain research roadmap covering certain issues that Yeah, that requires some more work in the future. So in the chapter 3, you find national examples of circular economy policy objectives and related indicator frameworks. This is why I was so interested in Philip's paper and overview. Maybe we can add this at the later stage to this document. Then some basic principles and main steps for developing a national indicator set to take into account the contextual situation of each country and also examples of presentation and communication of indicators. So you find an overview of the different starting points that countries have. So for example, Statistics Norway started with a European Union grant project. Finland extended existing indicator sets. So China started from scratch by having a national circular economy strategy and then kind of developing the related indicators. We also discussed today, and this is also presented in this document, there is a different number of national indicators and focus areas. So for example, Austria and France have relatively small sets, 10 to 15 indicators, versus Colombia, for example, uses more than 40 indicators. Canada has a strong focus on plastic materials. Finland looks more in the circular economy business indicators. But what they have in common is that all the frameworks aim for coherence with international frameworks. There is one example this is the example of the indicator framework of Finland, but you find several other examples in this document. Here is also examples from different countries on how they disseminate this. I think I don't have to go into more detail here. We have seen already very good examples today from Austria, Germany, but also from the European Environment Agency. I think one recurring issue is always these Sankey diagrams, which show the flow of materials, imports and domestic extraction, then what happens within the economy, what is exported, what is lost, and so on. And you can derive then also several indicators from these Sankey diagrams or relate them to the Sankey diagram, such as the circular material use rate, for example. Then the chapter 4, this is more the technical chapter and the how to do it. So what are key data sources and existing statistical frameworks? So not to reinvent the wheel for a second time. What classifications are important to be considered, and some general measurement considerations, and so on and so forth. Here is a list of the frameworks that are typically used in data sources that are typically used in statistics, like the Framework for Development of Environment Statistics, the System of National Accounts, but also the System of Environmental Economic Accounting has already been mentioned. And then there is also a detailed discussion on the role of the new classification of environmental purposes, the CEP. And big thank you also to Renato and his team who provided lots of input for this chapter. Oops. Then the general measurement considerations include practical solutions for unclear indicator definitions and scope, to how to gradually improve the data quality and availability, and issues related to data quality and inconsistency. Then this is an example for, let's say, low-hanging fruits or quick win indicators. So there is also a suggestion for how you can kickstart a national indicator set on the circular economy, and typically it starts with waste because these are usually the best developed types of statistics that are available. And from that you can start and also thinking of indicators related to material consumption and productivity, and then gradually develop it like the example of Austria, for example, showed. So there is some practical guidance for beginners in what could be good starting points given the existing indicators. Then we have detailed description and practical examples for a number of core indicators. So it's not only the formula, it's also how to do it, and with some national examples without going into detail. And then we also have a chapter which discusses the importance of stakeholder collaboration. We have heard a lot about it already today, I think, in almost all the presentations. So it says which types of collaboration are important, what stakeholders do you have, what is typically the role of the stakeholders, which can be different depending on the national context. This is also underlined with several national examples. And what are the formal mechanisms that are needed to maintain a collaboration over time. So we have heard, for example, of task forces in the Austrian case. And there is also a research roadmap proposed, because we said we cannot resolve everything. As you know, there's still some conceptual clarifications needed, lots of methodological development. So, for example, methodologies, guidance for non-based strategies. I think this was also mentioned in Miller's presentation. There's lack of methodologies. Data sources, digitalization, and innovation is mentioned, and also, how to further develop institutional cooperation, capacity development, and communication. This is giving credit to all those who have contributed to this work. Several of you are connected today, and I leave it at that for the sake of time. This draft will be circulated very soon, and everybody is invited to constructively comment on this draft so that we can further develop it before it will be published. Thank you very much. Over to you, Christine.
Thank you, Michael. And I would just like extend again the invitation which Michael just mentioned to actively contribute to this e-consultation. In the sake of time, I will just continue now with my own very short presentation before we move on to the moderated discussion. And if there are any questions to either Michael's presentation or then later on to mine, maybe after my presentation we can do a very quick turnaround, and if there are any questions, they can be asked. But also please feel free to use the chat if you have already any questions. So then very quickly from my side, my presentation will just very briefly outline and describe the use of circular economy related indicators and monitoring in environmental assessments. We have already heard, especially from Yanis in his two presentations, about the importance of regularly reviewing the state of the environment to enhance our knowledge, and of course link the monitoring results and assessment results to adjusting policies and to set the right measures. One of the assessments UNECE is in charge of is the so-called Pan-European Environmental Assessment. The Pan-European Environmental Assessments are part of the Environment for Europe process since about 30 years. And they provide a robust and comprehensive evidence base on environmental conditions and trends in the Pan-European region. The assessments inform ministerial decisions and the so-called ministerial conferences for Environment for Europe ministerial conferences. And the next assessment that is to be prepared is actually the 8th Pan-European assessment, for which preparations have started. And it's planned to present the results of this assessment during the 10th Environment for Europe Ministerial Conference, which is planned to take place in 2028. I just would like to say here also something that this 8th Pan-European assessment is jointly produced by UNECE together with UNEP. And this is actually the setup since 2016. Before 2016, actually, the Pan-European assessments were produced by the European Environment Agency. And actually, the European Environment Agency is still contributing through the data they have available from their own Europe's Environment Report to the preparation of the Pan-European assessment. Just to very briefly tell you a little bit more how this pan-European assessment will look like. It will be an indicator-based assessment, similar like the last one. It will, of course, reflect a little bit and provide an overview on existing environmental policies in the region, regional context. The pan-European region is slightly bigger than what we heard before related to European Union and the EA's Europe Environment for Europe's report. So we will also look into data and an assessment of the situation in Central Asia, Caucasus countries, and so forth. The pan-European assessment, the next one, will also feature chapters that look into the traditional environmental themes. We have here, we have heard before, issues like fresh water will be assessed, the situation related to biodiversity and ecosystem health, chemicals and waste, and so forth. But also to note that recent assessments have increasingly focused on green and circular economy transition, and there will also be a chapter specifically on that topic. The pan-European assessments usually also include a section or a chapter on the themes of the 10th Environment for Europe Ministerial Conference, or in general, the Environment for Europe Ministerial Conferences. During the last conference, actually, we had the themes on greening the economy in the pan-European region, working on sustainable infrastructure or towards a sustainable infrastructure. And the second theme was actually on applying principles of circular economy to sustainable tourism. So we can see that actually already in the past, those aspects have been considered more and more. For the upcoming assessment, just very briefly, here an overview on some circular economy related indicators, which we try to get the data for all the more than 50 countries actually. You see here some indicators that have been mentioned before. Starting with some waste generation and waste management related indicators. We also heard before that that's usually the starting point. These are also the indicators that are more widely available across the pan-European region and also mostly comparable. We also have indicators included related to material consumption, but also then indicators that look into the circularity of materials. We have heard several times about the circular material use rate indicator, but we also have included in the list of indicators for the pan-European assessment indicators that look at the impacts, environmental impacts. Here we have, for example, level of water stress, greenhouse gas emissions, and so forth. And we also, and we have heard that before, actually, we also have some indicators that look into the economic and social opportunities that a transition to circular economy can provide. So we try to monitor and measure progress and tell the story related to that. Yeah, that's just a very brief overview on the indicators which we have proposed. Also just a little bit about how these indicators were decided upon. So usually that's a bit longer process where we use our UNECE platform called the Working Group on Environmental Monitoring and Assessment, as well as the UNECE Intergovernmental Joint Task Force on Environmental Statistics and Indicators. And actually in these meetings, the countries that come from the UNECE region have actually brought forward this list of indicators and have also asked us to, of course, look into already existing indicators to the extent possible, Especially you see here in the list also various times the reference to Europe's environment report. So we have been asked actually to use, of course, some of the data and already existing information that's out there. But also you see here OECD listed, for example, and of course SDG indicators, which is also important. So that's everything from my side. I mean, there are challenges, of course, related to the production of these indicators. We are aware of this, but we hope, of course, that today's meeting and also the activities in the different projects will contribute to make this data available, and we invite all of you to contribute to producing these indicators and to contribute to this assessment. Thank you very much from my side. Yeah. So with this, actually, I move on. Maybe very quickly, if there are any questions to Michael's presentation or related to the indicators for the pan-European assessment, there is an opportunity now to ask questions. If not now, of course, as before, there is the opportunity to use the chat. Just very quickly, I'm checking the chat. I don't see any questions. Also no raised hands. So with this, I think we will directly move on with our interactive discussion session. And I invite Nick from the UNECE Secretariat to guide us through the panel discussions in this, like in the remaining, let's say, 40 minutes, actually. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. So this discussion will focus on the production and use of circular economy indicators, and we will try to address some concrete challenges, the EU monitoring framework and upcoming developments, as well as practical recommendations for countries at early stages of measuring a circular economy. And this is going to be based on the experiences of countries and international organizations. We have as our panelists, most of our speakers so far. We have Miller from Statistics Austria, Tatiana from UNIDO, Renato from Eurostat, Ioannis from the European Environment Agency, and Philip from the German Environment Agency. And as a bit of a warm-up, I think that Michael will be guiding us through a little poll. I'll let you explain, Michael.
Yeah, sorry, I was looking for the button to unmute myself. Yeah, so everyone is invited to contribute to an easy icebreaker poll. So the question to you is, what are your biggest challenges in producing circular economy indicators? This is a very broad question, but it would be nice to see what you think. So we have here on this, you can use your cell phone or you can use your computer. You see also the QR code here. So the possible answers are lack of institutional mandate, data quality and reliability, harmonization with international frameworks, low policy demand, limited financial or human resources, lack of institutional mandate, lack of digital systems or interoperability, and so on, or maybe other. If your answer is other, then please post this in the chat, and we leave this open for a minute or so, just to see a little bit the sentiment where we're gonna add up.
Just to add, the challenge here is you can only tick 3 of the challenges.
Sorry, I forgot to mention that. Yeah, you can tick 3.
Oh.
Because otherwise maybe all of them would be ticked. So so it's nice to see the movements here. So we have 7 have answered so far, maybe a bit more. We have so many participants. Yeah, 11. And it's anonymous, so don't be shy. So yeah, but but we can see a kind of trend. So data quality and reliability seems to be the winner for the time one, or the loser. It depends on from which perspective you see it. Limited financial or human resources is for the time being number one. Low policy demand and political prioritization. That's interesting. Comes on the third. Lack of digital systems interoperability. And lack of institutional mandate is not ranked that highly. That's interesting. Okay, I think we can see a trend. So let's start with the top three. Data quality and reliability seems to be the biggest challenge. Limited financial or human resources, and also the policy demand. So these are the three highest ranked challenges. I leave it like that for the time being. So thank you everybody who has contributed. Over to you, Nick. You can use this information maybe for a next question.
Yes, thank you.
I
So
leave this
maybe,
here on the screen.
yeah,
and
leave
then
it on the screen a bit, and maybe we could have a little bit of a reaction from Miller and Philip if you have any views about this. Maybe Miller, would you like to say something first?
Yes, thanks. So the winner was the data quality and reliability, and I'm wondering, probably this point also covers those challenges we were discussing already before. So methodological challenges and this question of policy needs and feasibility of producing indicators that are wished. And maybe limited financial or human resources that might also have something to do with the mandate. So that's also these topics maybe cover more than it's what we see obviously there.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thanks. And Philip, do you have a reaction?
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I think it makes sense against the background what you discussed, that the data quality and reliability is the top scorer. It's especially important because, as we discussed, some of the indicators do not yet come from the official statistics. So I think circular economy being a relatively new policy area is probably the reason that the official statistics always take some time to adapt these to the policy needs. I think for us, from the national situation, also harmonization issues would be also among the top ones, namely methodological differences. For instance, when deriving metrics such as the material footprint or other footprint metrics, where maybe the methodologies we use at national scale might differ a bit from some of the international developments, and hence having different results. That adds a layer of complexity when communicating these to the policymakers who are not so deep into the methodologies behind calculating these indicators. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And I like Roman, his comment, Roman from Moldova, that he would like to choose more than 3 of the challenges, but he can't. And I think also that we have a bit of a different situation between the presenters who have been from EU countries and European Environment Agency, Eurostat, and so on, whereas many of the participants are from countries with economies in transition. So this is why you also get a greater focus on the financial and human resources. But thank you for that. I have a series of questions for you. I mean, Renato, if you want to react as well, please do. Please do. Go ahead.
Yes, I was looking for the hand to raise, but I wanted to add to what William Philip said, because I think there is an there is a message, let's say, underlying this data quality, and because first we have to separate official statistics from non-official statistics, and of course there could be a data quality for non-official statistics, but beyond this, for what is official statistics, there is also, I think, the message here is sometimes is also the pertinence of the indicators to tackle the circular economy policy, because we have to remember that we have identified the indicators within the several monitoring frameworks from what already exists, and really a few indicators, we can count them in one hand, have been produced, really brand new indicators like the circularity rate. So sometimes they are kind of proxies that have been adapted to monitor this new policy.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and one thing that came to my mind when you were speaking about this is also I didn't look at the composition of our the participants in terms of what the mixture is between environmental experts and statisticians, because I guess the views about data quality and reliability may be quite different between the different groups. So we have hopefully 5 themes that we will go through rather quickly. And I will invite certain of our panelists to intervene, but all are very welcome to do so. And the first theme is about data quality and harmonization. And I would ask, what are the key challenges and possible solutions for data quality and harmonization? And can you bring an example from your own experience? And maybe I would actually ask UNECE if you would like to respond first on this one.
Yes, thanks, Nicholas. I also want to link this with the previous discussion, because data quality, of course, came first. That's why maybe you're starting from that. But to me, it's also about data availability. And in our case, the way we develop an indicators, we start with what it is that we would like to measure. So we ask a question: how is this aspect of circular economy going? And then we look for data sources that can be used to answer that question. And sometimes you do succeed in this, but most of the times the data that exactly answers your question is not there. Perhaps for the big things like how much material goes into our economies or how much waste we generate, perhaps you have quite good detailed data because these are routinely reported data. But what happens about more, excuse my word, obscure circular economy strategies like repairing products and remanufacturing and so on, it's much more difficult to find the data. So if I can define data quality as in a more broad sense, then the relevance of the data is an issue for me. Like the matching what is out there in terms of data and what is it that you're trying to monitor. And if I define relevance like that, then that's a big problem. Then as a second part of your question, really quickly, you asked about harmonization, and most people would think about harmonizing data across regions, geographical regions. So maybe Austria has some data that is not collected in the same way that Germany is, and I'm referring to those because we have panelists from these countries. But that's not the only issue of harmonization. Harmonizing across years is also a quite important issue for me that is also pertinent to the data quality. And I'll give you an example because you asked for it, from an indicator we have developed on public views on circular economy. So there is a tool called the Eurobarometer we use in the EU asking people periodically about questions about the environment. The trouble is that these questions are not always the same. Also, people are not always the same. Political developments happen, or our societies evolve over time, and so on. So both the questions asked and the answers given are not directly comparable from one year to the next, and we have to make sense of all that somehow. So we need to account for these changes in a way, monitoring the circular economy from that perspective. So yeah, a lot to think about. Thank you for the question. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that question was missing about the availability of actual any data at all. It's not just for quality of data, but whether you've got any numbers to share. Philip, would you like to react?
Sure. Yeah, I can try to build a bit on what Johannes said, because for me, if there's no data available, but we have a policy that demands data for this, we'll have to fill the gap somehow, at least in the short to medium term, until better, in quotation marks, data becomes available. So I think both are inherently linked, the data quality and data availability. I mean, data quality depends on what type of data you have and whether it's from official statistics or from maybe some other, maybe not as reliable sources. And I think this is one of the main challenges, is that the current statistics, let's say, are not yet capable of sufficiently monitoring some of the targets also that come from EU policies. So one specific example would be that the Critical Raw Material Act in the EU aims that by 2030, we need to have 25%, or at least 25% of EU's annual consumption of strategic raw materials, which are a subgroup of the critical raw materials, must be met through domestic recycling. So that means in order to measure whether we get close to this goal or not, we need data for this. And the official statistics do not have this type of data at this point on the metal recycling. Renato presented earlier that in the EU Circular Economy Monitoring Framework, we have the end-of-life recycling input rate as one indicator. This would be what we want to measure in that regard. But it comes from material system analysis studies that the JRC carries out together with DG GROW. They are published every other year. It's a big research study essentially to fill this data gap. So it's not from the official statistics. It's from another data source, from a scientific study or a study that consultancies carry out. So I think we would need to think about, what's the reason for this? I think the reason is that the official statistics are not usually material or substance specific in their systematics, but they are more oriented, let's say, towards the products and the product categories, in the case of the production and trade statistics. Or maybe they are good at capturing the extent to which hazardous wastes are being produced and the places of origin where they come from in the case of the waste statistics. And there's also no information on the composition of products and wastes, in terms of alloying elements, recyclable materials, the impurities, pollutants, etc. So I think we need to start thinking about how can we fill this data gap, from other sources in the short to medium term. But in the longer term, of course, the official statistics need to be assessed with regards to the material cycles as a whole that we want to assess when looking at circular economy. And I think there are various ideas. I don't think we have time to get into this, but there could be maybe translation tables from goods and merchandise statistics into the waste code system and vice versa, or other ideas that maybe Renato could give a few examples or so, people that are very close to these statistics. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. Renato, would you indeed like to follow up?
Yeah, directly linking first to Johannes, I want to point out to the Environment Agency, what the Environment Agency does with the Circular Economy Lab, because in the context of data availability, indeed they distinguish between what is an indicator and what is a signal. So this, I think, is a good example of transparency, and because of course you can with signals you can have an idea, a general idea of one issue, but it's difficult then to make a decision based on maybe partial information. And for harmonization, I will mention what a methodological statistical framework like the SIA can do. It can increase the harmonization of data across the several aspects of the circular economy policy. Increase the consistency also across countries, and facilitate the integration of physical and monetary information. So all in all, I think that policymaker will benefit from consistent, comparable, and comprehensive statistics and indicators then when they are integrated in an accounting approach, such as the system of environmental economic accounting.
Okay, thank you. Maybe I would jump ahead on the themes that we have to look at the early stage countries and the challenges and recommendations. And I would ask the panelists on the basis of their own experience, what could you recommend to countries at an early stage of measuring circular economy, how to get started, and what should be the priorities in the early years? What are the quick wins? And maybe Mila, you would like to start on this?
Yes. First, recommendation to start simple and gradually make it more complex. And yes, of course, the CSC guidelines for measuring circular economy are a very good starting point. They also include this set of core indicators, and that set I would have a look at first, and particularly the group on material life cycle and value chain, because it includes indicators based on economy-wide material flow accounts and waste statistics, and these are the data is usually available. That's an easy start. And of course, also we have already heard several times today about the Eurostat, the EU's monitoring framework. It's also a good baseline because those indicators to a big part are based on official statistics, and that's why they are also quite feasible. So it is easy to produce. And yes, what I would also, the recommendation that I have is to follow the international discussions and developments, because there is a lot happening and developing, and yes, to follow and also to actively participate. Yes, we don't need to invent everything ourselves. So yes, we can learn a great deal from each other. So that's, I think, the active participation is really important. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, and Philip?
Yeah, I would echo what was just said. I fully agree. Maybe to add to this, I think it's important, again, before you start developing a framework, think about what should be monitored against the specific country need, against the specific policy goals that you have. Maybe initial focus would be more on, waste reductions, better recycling, etc., and gradually then maybe to branch out into additional aspects. As was just said, I think use these platforms, the EIONet, also this platform we are using today by UNECE. I think those are really good good places to get the discussion started. And I think for some of the, let's say, more complex indicators, especially those that relate to resource footprints, there is actually a lot of, or an increasing number of institutions out there that provide data also at country level. The EEA has a consumption footprint, and so does the JRC. Some of these are available at country level. There's also from the UN, the UNEP SCP head, the Sustainable Consumption and Production Hotspot Analysis Tool, which uses a slightly different way of calculating these resource footprints, but it can be also used to do some hotspot analysis. So to get a first idea of where stuff comes from through the imports into a country, which countries are involved, which is, I think, really relevant right now, given this focus more on security of supply, global supply chains, etc. UNEP International Resource Panel also has a database. I think it was mentioned maybe by the colleague from UNIDO or someone earlier also. There's a lot of data on material flows for basically all the countries around the world. Again, it might not match completely in terms of the results you get with what, for instance, Eurostat then for the EU countries reports. But I think it's a really interesting way to get into the topic and to use some of the publicly available resources out there. Thank you.
Thank you. And Tatiana?
Yes, thank you, Nicholas. It's becoming more and more difficult not to echo the previous speakers, but I will actually narrow down again, focusing on industry as a primary data producer, if you want. The element of making those statistical indicators relevant to specific priority sectors are of particular importance. So having the priority sectors identified, for example, we hear a lot that construction materials production is of relevance to circularity because a lot of those products can be returned and reused. And there is even a very recent regulation in Ukraine on having the owners of those construction and demolition wastes to increase their reporting or rather use of those resources as recycled resources. So focusing on specific sectors would already generate interest of those who are part of those sectors. So that's a first step to see what can be done. And of course, other non-sector but rather topical priority pilots could be associated with food processing or with metals. And here the critical raw materials are coming into the picture, how we can generate and return them into the productive use. Also the issue of plastics, yes, how we can make the share of plastics lower or non-recyclable plastics eliminated. So having that dialogue initiated by those ad hoc initiatives would definitely have the first steps supported by the stakeholders and actually implemented in the country. So that's my input to the discussion. Thank you.
I mean, you mentioned businesses and what do you see as the role of business and industry in the monitoring work as well?
Well, first of all, the relevance of businesses should be ensured through asking them to actually contribute with data or inputs to those important discussions. We had in Armenia, for example, we had a case when businesses were confronting the initiative of the government on closing the circle in the fisheries production because the water circle can be closed. And it is a great initiative, but it cannot happen without a business to have a word in that, without business to show how long it will take them to adapt to that. And showing that means providing data on when that's going to be possible for them to transfer their production cycle from the open to closed loop. So this is like a chain of decisions, and not imposing regulations, but rather listening to what is possible to have those topical discussions is what's important. And that can be done not only with individual enterprises, maybe it's very difficult to collaborate in that, but to have those associations, those agglomerators of opinions to be engaged actively when the policies are formulated and to be surfaced, in particular when the business interests are under threat, so to say.
Thank you. I was going to ask about partnerships more generally, but actually I noticed in the poll that this was less of a concern than about the policy relevance and the policy needs. And maybe I would ask on that, how can we develop the indicator sets that are really useful for policy making, for budgeting, and for development of regulatory frameworks? I don't know if UNECE, would you like to speak about what you see as the observed shifts that you've seen in terms of what is needed by policymakers?
Sure, thanks. I think it's a really timely question because we have been seeing since a couple of years a shift in the focus in EU policymaking towards a lot more, taking into account a lot more economic and social considerations. I also put a few of the buzzwords in my presentation, like security and competitiveness, right? Luckily, circular economy is a policy agenda that can address multiple issues in one go. So we do circular economy because we want to address environmental impacts from resource use, but also we do it because it can deliver prosperity in our societies and our economies, right? So the first thing I would do in order to adjust to shifting policy context is to understand these links better. How exactly is it the circular economy delivers on competitiveness and security? Security of resources, for instance, by reducing import dependencies, or a competitiveness looking at secondary raw material markets. How can we improve those, for instance? And then the indicators will follow. I think the key thing for indicators is to have first of all the know-how. How is it that we develop indicators? How do we ask the right questions? How do we choose data sets to answer these questions? And also to be agile in our circular economy monitoring platforms to add indicators that address these changing policy objectives. Yeah. So first, we need to understand what's happening, then understand what circular economy can do to address these objectives. Then we need to ask the right questions, and finally look for good data to develop indicators.
Okay, thank you. I would like to actually ask Tatiana about this as well before we have to close. But I would like to point to the questions in the chat, and maybe Michael can try and answer the question about the multiplicity of standards and frameworks and how these are being brought together. But Tatiana, would you like to say something about this policy making and policy making needs and so on? And then
yes,
as well.
Thank you, and I think that Philip also has his hand up, but so just from my side briefly, there are strategic resource concerns which are addressed by policies, and those are very relevant from the government perspective, but they can be translated into concrete interests and connected not only to environmental sustainability, but also economic sustainability, which availability of those resources in the country can address. So, as example, the dependence on imported raw materials or availability of secondary sources for critical materials or minerals, or rather strategic value chains where circularity can be enhanced, like we're speaking about batteries here or electronics. Sometimes these strategic resources which are embedded into those sectors or questions would help to initiate the dialogue and engage more interested parties that would then follow the policy change and inform the necessary policy perspective to shift the narrative from broader discussion on scarcity of resources to very concrete steps in very concrete issues and questions associated with those policies. So that would be the suggestion I would have.
Thank you. And maybe finally, Philip.
I'll make it very brief, but I just wanted to reply or say a few words about the question that Roman posted in the chat on the corporate sustainability reporting directive, which I think is really relevant for companies, at least in the European Union, because this will provide additional valuable information on ESG reporting, so environmental, social, corporate governance reporting. And there is, as he mentions, there's one standard from the European Sustainability Reporting Standards, the E5, which introduces mandatory reporting, of course, on resource use, waste, and circularity. And I'm not an expert in this, but as far as I know, there was some commenting on the standard. So I think it's more or less final at this point. And I think for the group that is also present here today, I think it will be very interesting to look into what is actually reported and how this can connect to the micro scale that Michael mentioned earlier, because we've been mostly talking about macro and meso, and I think this will provide additional kind of bottom-up information. There are some platforms such as the Sustainability Reporting Navigator that provide company level data already, that basically through a web crawling process looks at the reports that companies put online. And some of them have already proactively started reporting according to the standard, but the mandatory reporting now kicks in. And I think in the next year or so, there will be very valuable information becoming available, not only from the researcher's point of view, but also from the perspective of governments trying to monitor circular economy. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for trying to answer the big question from Roman. We've run out of time, so I would just like to say a very big thank you to our speakers just now, to Renato, Yanis, Philip, Mila, and Tatiana. Really very, very good. We could have carried on for another hour or two, I think, but thank you. And I hand back to Jana, is that right? Yes, I'm being told yes.
I would like to wrap up as fast as possible. I have 4 minutes, 2 minutes. The workshop highlighted several priority actions. The first one and key one is strengthen policy institutional frameworks with clear targets and monitoring mechanism, and enforce legislation and develop national strategies on circular economy. The second one, it's around improved data and indicators, which has to be in line with European standards and UNECE recommendations. And of course, investment in monitoring capacity and digital tools. Important elements which now came out, it's adapt monitoring new approaches. It's use these digital tools and also use proxy indicators. Engagement of stakeholders is very important to increase transparency and participation. One of the elements to discuss, enhance regional cooperation, to share knowledge and to use European funded initiative and technical assistance to strengthen monitoring systems. And probably the key element to secure sustainable fundings to finance circular economy project and monitoring systems. I think it's short, but what we're discussing during 4 hours.
Thank you very much, Shana, for highlighting a few key messages and providing a short summary of our very fruitful and interesting workshop. I mean, what Nick just said also before, I mean, of course, we could continue. I mean, the discussions were very rich. We realized that it's a very complex but also very important topic. And I mean, the idea behind this workshop was actually to give a first flavor about the different frameworks, what's out there. I think we heard very well from the presentations from Renato, Michael, Yanis, but also the link to the business sector and industry, what Tatiana said, what it is about, what tools are already available. And of course, also very useful were the practical examples by countries. I always actually enjoy those very much because they give like really hands-on information on how to really start, who to involve. And I mean, it's a little bit of a process, of course, sometimes to maybe to try and sometimes maybe fail, but then improve. I mean, it's a complex topic, and we heard from various speakers that it's a gradual journey. And I'm actually very pleased that we all gathered today and actually explored some of the solutions, but also discussed challenges. And yeah, I hope within the EU4 Green Recovery East project, we can continue this journey together with our partners here in this meeting, but also with others. I mean, we heard from Tatiana several times that it's of course important also to involve the business sector. And just very briefly for information also, all presentations will be made available at the meeting website. They are not yet there, but they will be made available, including all the links that have been mentioned in the slides and so forth. I also got the request, or like actually some messages whether the recording can be shared. Actually, we are exploring that. I think it will be available and be possible to share that actually. So because there was already interest expressed in the chat in some messages that it would actually be good to go back to some of what has been said and the information provided. Yeah, with this, I would like, of course, to thank all participants, but especially, of course, also our presenters, all our speakers, but of course also my colleagues in the UNECE Secretariat, Nick, Michael, Caroline, Oksana, who actually just sent you an evaluation survey, which we hope you would be filling in, because this is hopefully not the last workshop of that kind we are organizing. There are other plans and activities, of course, under this specific project, but overall, within the platforms I have mentioned before. So UNECE has various intergovernmental platforms where the different topics of environmental monitoring, circular economy monitoring, but also circular economy related statistics and indicators are discussed. And yeah, with this, I would like to close the meeting. Thank you very much once again. And if anyone else would like to take the floor, here is you have 1 minute just to say something if anyone would like to say something. Thank you very much, colleagues. It was great that you all participated and stayed actually throughout the lunch break. And yeah, thank you very much.